I do not care about the child. That is what my mother-in-law said about my 8-year-old daughter. The sentence hung in the air like toxic smoke in my own hallway. I stood frozen in the shadows, my hand hovering over the door handle, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. I waited for my husband to defend us. I waited for Derek, the man I had shared a bed with for 10 years, to tell his mother that she could not speak about his flesh and blood that way. Instead, I heard him laugh. It was a cold, dismissive sound. "My wife is not so smart," Derek said to her. "She is just a worker bee. She will sign whatever we need her to sign, because she is terrified of losing me. She does not read the fine print." I stepped back into the darkness of the garage, tears burning my eyes. They thought I was the sheep. They thought I was the quiet, desperate little wife who would do anything to keep the peace. They forgot that I am a forensic auditor for Fortune 500 companies. My entire career is built on finding the lies people try to hide in the numbers. They forgot that I hunt wolves for a living, and they certainly did not know that I had just bought the bank that held the mortgage on the house they were standing in. Before I tell you how I turned their arrogance into their absolute destruction, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. Hit that like button and subscribe if you have ever had to remind someone that your silence is not weakness. It is strategy. My name is Simone, and at 32 years old, I have mastered the art of being invisible in plain sight. In the high society circles of Black Atlanta, image is everything. You have to drive the right car, attend the right church, and wear the right labels. My husband Derek lives for that image. He manages a luxury car dealership selling dreams he cannot afford to people who can. He wears three-piece suits and talks a big game, but I know the truth. I know that his credit score is lower than his IQ. I know that he juggles credit cards like a circus performer just to keep up appearances. I, on the other hand, drive a 4-year-old sedan. I wear simple blazers. I do not wear my wealth on my sleeve. Derek calls me boring. He says I lack vision. He does not know that while he is flashing a leased Rolex, I am managing a diversified portfolio worth millions. I keep my finances separate for a reason. I learned a long time ago that money changes people, but the lack of money reveals who they really are. The beginning of the end started last Saturday morning. The air in our master bedroom was thick with tension, the kind that makes your skin prickle. We were getting ready for his mother Bernice's 65th birthday dinner. In Bernice's world, a birthday is not just a celebration, it is a coronation. She demands tribute. Derek was standing in front of the full-length mirror, obsessively adjusting his silk tie. He looked at me through the reflection, his eyes scanning my outfit with that familiar look of disappointment. I was wearing a charcoal gray dress, elegant, understated, and professional. It was me. "You are not wearing that. Are you?" he asked, his voice dripping with condescension. I smoothed the fabric at my waist. "What is wrong with it, Derek? It is a dinner, not a fashion show." He turned around, sighing as if dealing with a stubborn child. "It is drab, Simone. It makes you look like a secretary. Mom likes you in pink. She says it makes you look softer, more feminine. You know how much appearances matter to her. We need to look like a power couple, not like a manager and his assistant." I felt the heat rise in my cheeks. I hate pink. I have always hated pink. But for the past decade, I have worn it to please them. I have diminished myself to fit into the small box they built for me. Not today, I thought, but I did not say it. Not yet. "I am not changing Derek," I said calmly, picking up my purse. "This is who I am." He rolled his eyes and muttered something about me being stubborn and difficult. Then he walked over to the safe in his closet and pulled out a velvet box. He tossed it onto the bed. "At least wear these," he said. I opened the box. It was a necklace and earring set. Gaudy, oversized gold chains with stones that were clearly glass, but trying desperately to look like diamonds. It was cheap costume jewelry, the kind that turns your skin green if you sweat too much. "Derek," I whispered, "these are fake." "So what?" he snapped, checking his watch. "They look expensive from a distance. That is all that matters. Mom will think I bought you new ice. It makes me look good. Just put them on, Simone. Stop making everything a debate." I looked at the cheap metal in my hands. It was the perfect metaphor for our marriage. Shiny on the outside, worthless on the core, and purely designed to make him look successful. I clasped the necklace around my neck. The cold metal felt like a collar. Fine, I said. If it makes you happy. See, that was not so hard, he said, flashing his salesman's smile. You look much better when you listen to me. We walked downstairs to the living room. That is where the real heartbreak was waiting. My daughter Maya was sitting on the rug. Maya is 8 years old, and she is on the autism spectrum. She is brilliant, kind, and sees the world in patterns and colors that I can only dream of. She was lining up her toy cars in a perfect straight line organized by the gradient of their color, from dark blue to light blue. It was beautiful. But when Derek saw her, his face twisted in annoyance. Maya, get up, he barked. Maya flinched, her shoulders hunching up. She did not look at him, she just kept adjusting the blue convertible, trying to find safety in her routine. Derek turned to me, his voice low and angry. Why is she doing that again? It is weird, Simone. We are about to go to a 5-star steakhouse. Mom invited the deacon and his wife. If Maya starts acting out or doing this obsessive stuff at the table, it is going to be embarrassing. I stepped between him and our daughter. She is playing Derek. She is self-regulating. She is anxious because she knows you are tense. She is not anxious. She is broken, he muttered. The air left my lungs. He had said it before in moments of anger, but it never stopped hurting. He saw our daughter as a defect, a dent in his perfect luxury car that he could not buff out. Do not call her that, I said, my voice trembling with suppressed rage. Whatever he said, checking his reflection in the hallway mirror one last time. Just make sure she behaves. And fix her hair. It looks wild. Mom hates it when her hair is natural like that. I knelt down next to Maya. She looked up at me, her big brown eyes filled with confusion. She sensed the hostility. She absorbed it like a sponge. I smoothed her braids and kissed her forehead. You are perfect, I whispered to her. You are the smartest person in this house, baby girl. Do not let them dim your light. Maya grabbed my hand and squeezed it. She knew. In her own way, she knew we were allies in enemy territory. We got into Derek's leased Mercedes. He blasted hip-hop music to drown out the silence. I sat in the passenger seat, staring out the window as the affluent suburbs of Atlanta rolled by. Huge mansions, manicured lawns, gates that kept the world out. It all looked so perfect. But I knew what was happening behind those closed doors. I knew about the second mortgages, the maxed-out credit cards, the silent desperation to stay relevant. Derek reached over and patted my leg, his mood suddenly shifting as he thought about the night ahead. Hey, he said, turning down the music. Tonight is a big night. I have a surprise for Mom. A big announcement. I need you to just roll with it, okay? Do not ask questions about the budget or the logistics in front of everyone. Just smile and be the supportive wife. A knot formed in my stomach. Derek's surprises usually involve spending money we did not have or volunteering my time for projects I did not agree to. What kind of surprise, Derek? I asked. He smirked, that arrogant sideways grin that used to make me melt, but now made me nauseous. Let's just say I am finally going to give Mom the life she deserves. I am going to prove to everyone that Derek King is a man of his word. And babe, you are going to help me sign the papers later. It is just standard stuff. Nothing you need to worry your pretty little head about. My pretty little head. The insult was wrapped in a compliment, but the poison was still there. He was setting me up. I could feel it in my bones. He was planning something massive, and he needed my credit, my signature, and my silence to pull it off. I looked at him, really looked at him. I saw the sweat beading on his forehead despite the air conditioning. I saw the way his knuckles gripped the steering wheel too tightly. He was desperate, and a desperate man is a dangerous man. Okay, Derek, I said softly. I will smile. He relaxed, thinking he had won. He thought he had his sheep back in line. He had no idea that he was driving us to his own funeral. He had no idea that the woman sitting next to him was not just a bean counter. I was the one who was about to audit his entire life. We pulled up to the Capitol Grill. The valet opened the door and I stepped out onto the pavement. The humidity of the Georgia evening hit me, but I felt cold inside, cold and sharp. I adjusted the fake gold necklace, took Maya's hand, and walked into the restaurant. The lion's den was waiting. But this time, the lion was in for a surprise, because I had brought my own teeth. The morning of the party began with the kind of silence that usually precedes a natural disaster. It was 7 in the morning on a Saturday, and while most families in Atlanta were sleeping in or making pancakes, I was already awake, sitting at the marble kitchen island that I had paid for, staring at a spreadsheet on my laptop. This was my sanctuary. The numbers made sense. The numbers did not lie. The numbers did not look at me with disappointment because I was not wearing the right shade of lipstick. My daughter Maya was sitting on the floor near the patio doors. The morning sun was streaming in, creating a grid of light and shadow on the hardwood, and Maya was meticulously arranging her collection of toy cars within those squares. She did not play with them in the traditional sense. She did not make engine noises or crash them together. She organized them by color, then by size, then by model. It was her way of making order out of a chaotic world. To me, it was beautiful. It was a visual language that only she and I spoke, but I knew that peace was temporary. Heavy footsteps thudded down the stairs. Derek walked into the kitchen looking less like a husband and more like a CEO, inspecting a factory that was failing to meet its quota. He was wearing a silk robe that he had bought with a credit card I was secretly paying off. He did not say good morning. He did not kiss me. He went straight to the coffee maker, poured a cup, and took a sip. He grimaced, setting the mug down hard enough to make the ceramic clatter against the stone counter. "This tastes burnt, Simone. Did you buy the cheap beans again?" I did not look up from my screen. "It is the same organic blend we have bought for 3 years, Derek. Maybe you just need to brush your teeth." He scoffed, walking around the island to lean over my shoulder. The smell of his expensive cologne was already overpowering, masking the scent of the stale bourbon he had consumed the night before. "Always working," he muttered, looking at my screen with disdain. "You know Mom is right. You need a hobby. You are obsessed with pennies. It is embarrassing. I am obsessed with solvency." Derek, I thought, but I stayed silent. I closed the laptop. "Today is a big day, Simone," he said, pacing the kitchen floor like a panther in a cage. "The anniversary dinner, the announcement. I need you to be on point. No sulking, no retreating into your shell, and definitely no talking about work. Nobody wants to hear about tax fraud while they are eating Wagyu beef." I stood up to clear his coffee cup. "I know the drill, Derek. Smile, nod, and pretend that our life is perfect." He grabbed my arm, not painfully, but with enough firmness to stop me. He looked me up and down. I was wearing my comfortable oversized t-shirt and leggings. His lip curled in disgust. "And please tell me you have a plan for your hair. And your outfit. You have been dressing like a librarian lately. It makes me look bad." Mom invited the deacon and his wife. "I need you to look like a trophy, not a participant trophy." I pulled my arm away gently. "I have a dress, Derek. The gray silk one." He groaned, throwing his hands up. "Gray. Again. Why are you so afraid of color? You blend into the walls. Mom likes pink. Why can you not just wear pink for one night?" "Because I am 32 years old, not 12, I said, keeping my voice level. He reached into the pocket of his robe and pulled out a small black velvet box. He slid it across the counter toward me. It stopped right next to my laptop. "Well, at least wear this. I picked it up yesterday. Real gold for a real woman. It will distract people from the dress." I opened the box. Inside lay a necklace that was trying too hard. The gold was too yellow, the design was clunky, and the stones were cubic zirconia. I knew exactly where he got it. I had seen the charge on our joint account notification 5 minutes ago. It was from a kiosk at the mall, not a jeweler. He had spent $200 and was presenting it to me like the Hope Diamond. "Thank you, Derek," I said, the lie tasting like ash in my mouth. "It is an investment," he said, puffing out his chest. "You have to spend money to look like money. You would not understand that. You are too busy saving for a rainy day to enjoy the sun." Suddenly, a rhythmic clicking sound filled the room. We both turned. Maya was tapping a blue plastic car against the glass of the patio door. Click, click, click. She was focused, her rhythm precise. It was her way of self-regulating, her way of processing the tension she could feel radiating from her father. Derek's face turned red. The vein in his forehead bulged. Maya stopped that, he barked. The clicking stopped instantly. Maya froze, her small shoulders hunching up toward her ears. She did not turn around. She just gripped the car tighter. "God, it is like living in a factory," Derek muttered, rubbing his temples. "Can you not get her to stop doing that weird stuff? It is creepy." "She is 8 years old, Simone. She should be playing with dolls, not lining up cars and tapping on glass like a Rain Man." My maternal instinct flared hot and sharp in my chest. I stepped between him and our daughter. "She is not weird, Derek. She is autistic. She is stimulating. She is happy. Leave her alone." He laughed, a cold, humorless sound. "She is broken, Simone. And you coddle her. Mom says it is because you baby her too much. If you were stricter, she would act normal. You know I am worried about tonight. If she starts doing that clicking thing at the restaurant or lining up the silverware, it is going to ruin everything. People will stare." "Let them stare," I said, my voice dropping an octave. "She is a child. She is a reflection of me," he snapped. "And I do not produce defects." The room went deadly silent. The word hung there. Defect. He had said it before, but never with such casual cruelty. I looked at the man I had married. I looked at the tailored robe, the fake confidence, the empty soul. I realized then that he did not see a daughter. He saw a dent in his bumper. He saw a scratch on his paint job. I walked over to the counter and picked up the velvet box. I snapped it shut. "I will get her ready," I said, my voice devoid of emotion. "And I will wear the necklace." "Good," he said, already turning back to his phone, dismissing the emotional carnage he had just caused. "Make sure you put on extra makeup. You look tired." I walked over to Maya and sat down on the floor next to her. I picked up a red car and placed it gently in the square of light next to her blue one. She turned to me, her big brown eyes filled with a wisdom that Derek would never possess. She handed me the blue car. We sat there in the silence, building a world of order and color, while the man who paid for the roof but not the mortgage walked upstairs to groom his ego. He thought I was beaten. He thought I was submissive. He did not know that while he was checking his Instagram likes, I was mentally moving funds from our joint savings into a secure trust for Maya. He did not know that every insult he threw at my daughter was another nail in the coffin of his credit score. I looked at the cheap necklace in my hand. It was heavy, gaudy, and fake. Just like him. I would wear it tonight. I would let it sit around my neck like a noose. But I was not the one who was going to hang. We spent the next 2 hours in a strange choreographed dance. I bathed Maya, dressing her in the soft cotton dress she loved, because the fabric did not itch her sensitive skin. I braided her hair, weaving in small gold beads that caught the light, telling her she looked like a queen. Derek paced the hallway, shouting into his phone, bragging to someone about the big deal he was going to close, lying about numbers, lying about his life. When it was finally time to leave, I stood in front of the hallway mirror. I had put on the gray dress. It fit me perfectly, draping over my body like liquid armor. I clasped the fake gold necklace around my neck. It clashed horribly. It looked exactly like what it was, a desperate attempt to look rich. Derek came up behind me. He was wearing a suit that cost more than my first car. He adjusted his tie, smiling at his own reflection, barely seeing mine. "There," he said, resting his heavy hand on my shoulder. "Now you look like a king." "See? Was that so hard?" He leaned in, whispering in my ear, his breath smelling of mint and rot. "Just remember tonight, Simone. Let me do the talking. You just nod and look pretty. Mom is going to be watching." I met his eyes in the mirror. I saw the arrogance. I saw the weakness. "I will remember Derek," I said. I grabbed my purse. Inside, tucked between my lipstick and my wallet, was a folded piece of paper. It was not a receipt. It was a printout from the county clerk's office. It was the deed to the house my mother-in-law lived in, the house Derek thought he was going to inherit, the house I now owned. I took Maya's hand. We walked out the door into the humid Atlanta air. Derek walked ahead of us, strutting toward the car, believing he was the captain of the ship. He did not notice the storm clouds gathering. He did not notice that the wind had changed. He unlocked the car, the beep echoing in the quiet cul-de-sac. "Shotgun," he yelled, laughing at his own juvenile joke. I opened the back door for Maya, buckling her in, making sure she had her noise-canceling headphones. I looked at her sweet face. "Are you ready?" I asked her. She nodded, tapping her fingers against her thigh. I climbed into the passenger seat. Derek revved the engine, looking at me with a grin that made my stomach turn. "Showtime, baby," he said. "Yes," I thought, staring straight ahead as we pulled out of the driveway. Showtime. But you have no idea what the script is. The Capitol Grill was crowded, buzzing with the low hum of expensive conversations and the clinking of heavy silverware. It was the kind of place where people came to be seen, not necessarily to eat. The air smelled of aged beef and old money, a scent that usually made me feel accomplished, but tonight it just made me feel nauseous. As we walked toward the private alcove in the back, I tightened my grip on Maya's hand. She was already pulling at the collar of her dress, her eyes darting around at the flickering candlelight and the shadows it cast on the mahogany walls. To her, this wasn't luxury. It was sensory overload. We arrived at the table and my stomach dropped. They were already there. My mother-in-law Bernice sat at the head of the table like a queen holding court. She was wearing a sequined gold dress that was far too bright for the dim lighting, and her hair was piled high in an elaborate updo that defied gravity. Beside her sat Tanisha, my sister-in-law, and her husband Kyle. Kyle. Just seeing him made my jaw clench. He was the only white person at the table, a fact he seemed to both ignore and exploit simultaneously. He was leaning back in his chair, arm draped over Tanisha, looking like he owned the place. He wore a linen suit that was wrinkled in all the wrong places, and his smile was a little too wide, a little too loud. "Well, look who finally decided to show up," Kyle announced, his voice booming across the restaurant. He stood up, not to greet us properly, but to make a show of checking his watch. "CP, time is real, huh? Derek?" He laughed at his own joke, a microaggression wrapped in a smile. Derek laughed too, that nervous, eager chuckle he always used around Kyle. "We are on time, Kyle," I said, keeping my voice cool as I helped Maya into her chair. "Our reservation is for 7:30. It is 7:25. Kyle waved his hand dismissively. "Technicalities, Simone. Always with the technicalities. Relax a little. Have a drink. You look like you need to loosen up." I sat down across from him. Tanisha looked me up and down, her eyes lingering on my gray dress, and then snapping to the fake gold necklace Derek had forced me to wear. She smirked. She was wearing a hot pink dress that barely covered her chest, and enough jewelry to sink a small boat. "Cute necklace," Simone, Tanisha said, her voice dripping with fake sweetness. "Is that from the new collection at Cartier? It looks so heavy." "It is a gift from Derek," I said, refusing to take the bait. Bernice tapped her glass with a spoon, demanding attention. "Everyone sit down." Derek, pour the wine. And Simone, try to look a little more grateful. "Your husband works hard to put jewelry on your neck." I watched Derek scramble to grab the wine bottle, pouring for his mother first, then Kyle, then Tanisha. When he got to me, he barely poured a splash before moving to fill his own glass to the brim. "So Simone," Kyle said, leaning forward and resting his elbows on the table. "How is the bean counting business? Catch anyone stealing staples lately? I am a forensic auditor, Kyle. I corrected him, unfolding my napkin. I investigate corporate fraud and embezzlement. Right numbers. Kyle chuckled, taking a large gulp of wine. Bean counting. Man, I could never do that. Sitting in a cubicle all day staring at spreadsheets. Sounds soul-crushing. You know, you should really look into what I am doing. Crypto is the future, Simone. Fiat currency is dead. I made 5 grand this morning just lying in bed. That is real work. Smart work. I looked at him. I knew for a fact that Kyle had borrowed money from Derek last month to pay his car note. I knew his so-called crypto investments were mostly pump and dump schemes that he was losing money on, but I just took a sip of water. That is fascinating, Kyle, I said. Bernice chimed in, her eyes glowing with admiration as she looked at her son-in-law. Kyle is a visionary. He has that entrepreneurial spirit just like Derek. They are big-picture men, not like you, Simone. You are a worker bee. You like your little safe salary and your little safe rules. Tanisha giggled, resting her head on Kyle's shoulder. I am just glad I do not have to work. Kyle takes such good care of me. He says a woman's place is to be the muse, not the mule. Right, baby? Exactly, Kyle said, kissing her forehead. Tanisha is a queen. She should not be stressing over bills. That is my job. I bit the inside of my cheek so hard I tasted blood. The irony was suffocating. Derek paid their rent 3 times last year. I paid off Tanisha's student loans 2 years ago so she would not default, though they did not know it was me. They thought it was some government forgiveness program because I handled the paperwork. Mom, Derek said, trying to steer the conversation. Let's order. I am starving. As we looked at the menus, I noticed Maya rocking back and forth slightly. The noise of the restaurant was getting louder. The clinking of glasses, the laughter from other tables, the jazz music playing overhead. It was all too much for her. She reached for the salt shaker, wanting to align it with the pepper shaker. Bernice reached out and slapped Maya's hand. It was a sharp, stinging sound. Stop that, Bernice hissed. Maya pulled her hand back as if she had been burned, letting out a small whimper. Mom, please, I said, my voice rising. Do not hit her. She is fidgeting, Bernice snapped. It is rude. Look at her. She is 8 years old and she cannot sit still. Tanisha was sitting like a lady when she was 3. Tanisha smirked. Well, I was raised right. I felt the rage boiling in my chest, hot and dangerous. You will not touch my daughter again, Bernice. Oh, calm down, Kyle interrupted, waving his fork. She is just disciplining the kid. You guys are too soft these days. My dad used to use the belt and I turned out fine. You are 30 years old and borrowing money from your brother-in-law. I wanted to scream, but I stayed silent. I looked at Derek, waiting for him to say something. Anything. To defend his child. Derek just looked down at his menu. Maya, just sit on your hands, okay? Listen to Grandma. My heart shattered. There it was. The betrayal. He chose his mother's approval over his daughter's safety. Again. The waiter arrived to take our orders. Kyle ordered the most expensive steak on the menu, the Wagyu ribeye, and added a lobster tail. Tanisha ordered the same. Derek ordered a bottle of champagne that cost $300. When it was my turn, I ordered a simple salad and a side of fries for Maya. On a diet, Simone, Tanisha asked, raising an eyebrow. Or are you just trying to save Derek some money? Don't worry, he has got it. Right, big brother. Derek puffed out his chest. Order whatever you want, Simone. Money is no object tonight. It is not about the money, I said quietly. I am just not hungry. Bernice scoffed. She is always trying to be a martyr. Look at her face. Sour as a lemon. You are ruining the vibe, Simone. Tanisha, tell us about your trip to Miami. I want to hear about something fun. For the next 20 minutes, I sat there like a ghost while they talked over me. Tanisha bragged about a trip that I knew they put on credit cards. Kyle talked about buying a boat with his imaginary crypto millions. Bernice ate it all up, praising them, calling them the golden couple. Meanwhile, Maya was deteriorating. She had stopped rocking and was now staring intensely at her glass of water. I knew the signs. She was dissociating. She was trying to find a focal point to block out the chaos. Maya, baby, do you want to go to the bathroom with Mommy? I whispered, leaning in close. We can take a break. She shook her head rapidly. No, no, no. Suddenly, a waiter dropped a tray of dishes near our table. The crash was deafening. Maya jumped. Her arm flailed out in a reflex of pure terror. Her hand hit her water glass. It happened in slow motion. The heavy crystal goblet tipped over. Ice water flooded across the white tablecloth. It soaked into the breadbasket. It dripped off the edge of the table and landed squarely in Bernice's lap. The cold water hit the gold sequins of her dress. Bernice screamed. It was a high-piercing shriek that stopped the entire restaurant. My dress! She yelled, jumping up. You stupid child! Maya began to cry, a low guttural sound of pure distress. She covered her ears with her hands, curling into a ball in her chair. I grabbed napkins frantically, trying to blot the water on Bernice's dress. I am so sorry, Mom. It was an accident. The noise scared her. Get away from me! Bernice shoved my hands away. She looked down at the wet stain on her expensive gown. Then she looked at Maya, who was trembling and sobbing. The look in Bernice's eyes was not anger. It was hatred. Pure, unadulterated hatred. She looked at Derek, who was sitting there with his mouth open, looking terrified. Not of his mother, but of the scene we were causing. I told you, Bernice hissed, her voice venomous and loud enough for the neighboring tables to hear. I told you not to bring her. She is a disaster. It was an accident, I pleaded, hugging Maya to my chest to shield her. It is always something with her, Bernice spat. She is not normal, Derek. Look at her, curling up like an animal. Then she said the words that would change everything. The words that would burn the bridge between us forever. She looked directly at me, her eyes cold and hard. You should not have birthed her, Simone. Honestly, if your genes were this defective, you should have done the world a favor and ended it before it began. The silence at the table was absolute. Kyle stopped chewing his steak. Tanisha's mouth fell open. Even Derek looked shocked. I felt the blood drain from my face. The room spun. Did she just say I should have aborted my daughter because she is autistic? Derek, I whispered, my voice trembling. Did you hear what she just said? Derek looked at his mother, then at me. He saw the people staring. He saw the waiter watching. He chose his side. Mom is just upset, Simone, Derek mumbled, avoiding my eyes. You know how much this dress cost. Just clean up the mess. Stop making a scene. He agreed with her. By not defending us, he agreed with her. Something inside me snapped. It wasn't a loud snap. It was quiet. It was the sound of a lock clicking into place, the sound of a vault door closing. I stood up. I did not wipe the table. I did not apologize again. I picked up my purse. Come on, Maya, I said, my voice eerily calm. Where are you going? Derek asked, panic finally entering his voice. We haven't even had the main course. You can't leave. Mom is about to open her gifts. I looked at him. I looked at the man I had loved for 10 years, and I saw nothing but a stranger in a cheap suit. I am taking my daughter home, Derek, before she catches whatever sickness you people have. I turned to Bernice. She was still dabbing at her dress, muttering curses. Happy birthday, Bernice, I said. I hope the stain comes out. But I doubt it. Some stains are permanent. I took Maya's hand and walked out of the restaurant. I did not look back. I heard Derek calling my name, but I kept walking. I walked past the valet, past the luxury cars, and hailed a taxi. I held my daughter in my arms as we drove away from the lights and the noise. She fell asleep on my shoulder, exhausted from the trauma. I stared out the window at the passing city. I did not cry. I was done crying. I took out my phone. I opened my banking app. I looked at the balance in our joint account. Then I looked at the hidden account, the one under the name Phoenix Holdings. Derek wanted to buy his mother a house. He wanted to play the big shot. He wanted to be the king. Fine, I thought. Let him be the king. But he forgot one thing. The queen is the most powerful piece on the board. And I was about to make my move. I dialed a number. It rang twice before a deep voice answered. David, it is Simone. Hi, Simone, it is late. Is everything okay? No, David. Everything is far from okay. I am ready to proceed. With the purchase, he asked. No, I said, watching the city lights blur. With the acquisition. I want the debt. I want the mortgage on the hillside property. And David, I want to buy the note on Bernice's current house too. There was a pause on the other line. Simone? That is aggressive. It is business, David. Just business. Do it first thing Monday morning. I hung up the phone. I looked down at Maya's sleeping face. I kissed her forehead. They called you defective baby girl, I whispered. They called us weak. I touched the cold glass of the window. Let's see how strong they are when the roof over their heads belongs to the bean counter. I returned to the table. It was a choice born not of submission, but of a sudden cold curiosity. After handing Maya over to the trusted nanny who had arrived to pick her up from the valet stand, a contingency plan I always kept for family events, I walked back into the private dining room. I needed to witness the rest of this performance. I needed to see exactly how far they would go. When I sat back down, the silence was thick enough to choke on. Bernice was dabbing at her dry dress with a napkin, acting as though she had survived the Titanic. Tanisha rolled her eyes so hard I thought they might get stuck in her head, and Kyle was busy picking something out of his teeth with a credit card. Derek, however, looked relieved. He interpreted my return as a victory. He thought he had won the standoff. He poured more wine into his glass, his hand shaking slightly, not from nerves but from the adrenaline of his own ego. I am glad you came to your senses, Simone. Bernice sniffed, not looking at me. It would have been incredibly rude to leave before the announcement. I did not say a word. I just folded my hands on the white tablecloth and waited. Derek stood up. He buttoned his suit jacket, cleared his throat, and tapped his fork against his champagne flute. The sound rang out sharp and piercing, silencing the murmurs of the restaurant around us. He looked around the table, his eyes glassy with intoxication and pride. Family, he began, his voice booming a little too loudly. We have had our ups and downs. We have had our struggles. But a man is defined by how he treats his queen. And Mom, you have been the queen of this family since Dad passed. Bernice placed a hand over her heart, tilting her head theatrically. Oh, Derek. Derek reached into his inner pocket and pulled out a folded brochure. He slapped it onto the table with a heavy thud. I know you have hated that condo since the day you moved in, Mom. It is too small. It is beneath you. So for the last 6 months I have been making moves. Big moves. He unfolded the brochure and slid it toward her. It was a glossy listing for a property in Hillside. I knew Hillside. It was the most exclusive, overpriced gated community in Atlanta. It was where rappers and athletes lived before they went broke. I officially put in the offer today, Derek announced, puffing out his chest. 5 bedrooms, 6 baths, a heated pool, a guest house for Tanisha and Kyle when they visit, and it is all yours, Mom. Happy birthday. Bernice gasped. She grabbed the brochure, her eyes scanning the photos of marble floors and crystal chandeliers. Oh my God, she shrieked. Derek, is this the one on Crestview Lane? The one with the double staircase? The very same, Derek beamed. $1.2 million. But for you, priceless. The table erupted. Tanisha screamed and clapped. Kyle whistled, pounding the table with his fist. Bernice started crying, real tears this time, tears of pure greed. My son, she sobbed, holding the paper like a holy text. My wonderful, successful son. Finally, someone recognizes my worth. I sat there frozen. My mind was racing, calculating, auditing. I knew our finances better than I knew the back of my own hand. I knew exactly how much was in Derek's checking account, and it was not enough to buy the front door of that house, let alone the whole thing. Then it hit me. The ice in my veins turned to fire. There was only one place that kind of down payment could come from. Derek, I said. My voice was not loud, but it cut through the celebration like a knife. Derek stopped smiling. He looked at me, annoyance flickering in his eyes. What, Simone? Can't you just be happy for 1 second? Where is the money coming from, Derek? I asked, my voice steady. The down payment, the closing costs, that is over $200,000 in cash. We do not have that in the liquid accounts. Derek waved his hand dismissively. I moved some things around, I leveraged some assets. Don't worry about it. I stood up slowly. My legs felt heavy, but I locked my knees to stop them from shaking. You moved some things around, I repeated. Derek, the only account with that kind of liquidity is the trust. The medical trust. The room went quiet again. But this time it was a dangerous quiet. You did not touch Maya's therapy fund. I said, the statement hanging in the air as a question I already knew the answer to. Derek rolled his eyes, letting out a dramatic groan. Oh my God, here we go. It is always about the money with you. It is always about hoarding. Derek, that money is for her future, I said, my voice rising for the first time. That is for her occupational therapy, her speech pathology, her schooling. We agreed. We signed papers promising never to touch that principal. It is my money, Derek shouted, slamming his hand on the table. The silverware rattled. I earned it. I go out there every day and hustle cars while you sit behind a desk playing with spreadsheets. I put that money in there and I can take it out. You are stealing from your disabled daughter to buy a mansion for one woman, I asked, incredulous. Bernice stood up, then her face twisted in a snarl. Watch your mouth, heifer, she spat. How dare you? My son is generous. My son provides. He is investing in real estate. That is what smart men do. Not that you would know anything about being smart. Kyle laughed, leaning back in his chair with a smirk that made me want to scream. Yeah, Simone, relax. Real estate always goes up. Derek is making a power move. You should be taking notes, not complaining. Stop counting beans and start seeing the vision. I ignored them. I looked straight at my husband. Derek, if you withdraw that money, you will trigger tax penalties. You will destroy 5 years of compound interest. And you will leave Maya with nothing if something happens to you. You cannot do this. Derek walked around the table until he was standing right in front of me. He loomed over me, using his height to intimidate, a tactic he had used for years. He leaned down, his face inches from mine, smelling of expensive scotch and rot. Let me make something clear to you, Simone, he hissed loud enough for the entire waitstaff to hear. You are a worker bee. That is all you are. You punch a clock, you get a paycheck. You do not have the mind for business. You do not understand leverage. You do not understand legacy. He pointed a finger at my chest. I wear the pants in this family. I make the decisions. You are here because I allow you to be here. You live in my house. You drive the car I leased. You are nothing without me. So you will sit down, you will shut your mouth, and you will sign the papers I give you later. Or you can pack your bags and go live in that little apartment you came from. He straightened up, adjusting his jacket, and turned to the rest of the table with a grin. Sorry about that, everyone. Sometimes you have to put the staff in their place. Tanisha cackled. Tell her, Derek. Put her on a leash. Bernice beamed at him. That is my strong man. Do not let her ruin my night. I stood there for a moment, letting the humiliation wash over me. I felt the heat of the stares from the other diners. I heard the cruel laughter of the people who were supposed to be my family. I saw the absolute lack of love in my husband's eyes. And then something shifted. It was not a snap. It was not an explosion. It was a click. A mechanical, precise click in the back of my brain. It was the sound of a file being closed. It was the sound of a chaotic audit turning into a criminal investigation. My heart rate slowed down. The shaking in my hands stopped. The tears that had been threatening to spill evaporated instantly. I looked at Derek. I really looked at him. I saw the sweat on his brow. I saw the fear behind the arrogance. I saw a man who was drowning in debt, desperately trying to buy affection with money he had stolen from his own child. He was not a king. He was a liability, and liabilities had to be liquidated. I slowly sat back down. I picked up my napkin and placed it gently on my lap. I picked up my fork. "You are right, Derek," I said. My voice was different now. It was smooth. It was detached. It was the voice I used when I told a CEO that he was going to federal prison. "I am just a worker bee." I continued looking him dead in the eye. "I do not understand big business. You are the visionary. You should buy the house. Mom deserves it, Mom." Derek blinked, surprised by my sudden surrender. He looked suspicious for a second, but his ego was too big to let him see the trap. "Exactly," he said, exhaling a breath he had been holding. "Glad you finally caught up." I took a sip of water. I watched them celebrate. I watched Bernice coo over the photos of the pool. I watched Kyle order another round of shots on Derek's tab. They were feasting on the carcass of my marriage, but they did not know that the meat was poisoned. Derek thought the money for the house was coming from Maya's trust. He thought he could just transfer it Monday morning, but he had forgotten one small detail. A detail I had buried in the fine print of the trust agreement 3 years ago. Any withdrawal over $10,000 required 2 signatures, his and the independent trustees. And the independent trustee was my lawyer, David. But I wasn't going to stop him. No, that would be too easy. I was going to let him try. I was going to let him sign the purchase agreement for the hillside house. I was going to let him put down the non-refundable deposit. I was going to let him commit fraud, and while he was busy playing real estate mogul, I was going to make a purchase of my own. I looked at the brochure lying on the table. 120 Crestview Lane. I memorized the address. Under the table, I slid my phone out of my purse. I sent a text to David. Subject: acquisition. Message: execute plan Phoenix. Buy the debt on 120 Crestview Lane immediately, and prepare the divorce papers, but do not serve them yet. I want to see them homeless first. I put the phone away and smiled at my mother-in-law. "It looks like a beautiful house, Bernice," I said. "I hope you enjoy every single second of it." Because those seconds are numbered, I thought. The waiter brought the check. It was over $4,000. Derek slapped his credit card down with a flourish. I watched the waiter walk away with the card. I knew it would decline. I knew Derek had maxed it out buying that fake necklace this morning. I waited. The waiter returned, leaning down to whisper in Derek's ear. "Sir, the card was declined." "Do you have another form of payment?" Derek's face turned purple. He patted his pockets, laughing nervously. "Oh, must be a fraud alert. Big purchase, you know." He pulled out another card. "Try this one." Declined. "Try this one." Declined. The table went silent. Kyle looked away. Tanisha checked her phone. Bernice looked at her son with sudden concern. Derek looked at me, sweat pouring down his face. His eyes were pleading. He needed the worker bee to save him. "Simone," he whispered, "do you have your card?" "I think I forgot to transfer the funds." I looked at him. I looked at the man who had just told me I was nothing. I picked up my purse. "I am sorry, Derek," I said loud enough for everyone to hear. "But like you said, I am just a worker bee. My little salary cannot cover a dinner like this. This is a king's meal. You will have to figure it out." I stood up and walked out of the restaurant for the second time that night. This time I did not stop. I walked out into the cool night air, leaving my husband to explain to his mother and the restaurant manager why the king had no clothes. As I waited for the valet to bring my sensible 4-year-old sedan, I checked my email. A notification from David popped up. "Acquisition in progress. We own the paper by Monday morning." I got into my car and drove home to my daughter. The war had begun. and they had just fired the first shot at a tank. 2 days after the disaster at the steakhouse, I came home early. It was a Tuesday, usually my busiest day at the firm, but a client meeting had been canceled last minute. Instead of staying to catch up on paperwork, I felt a strange pull to go home. Call it intuition. Call it the universe warning me. I drove into my subdivision around 2 in the afternoon, the streets quiet and empty. But my driveway was not empty. Parked next to Derek's leased Mercedes was a rusty sedan that belonged to Tanisha, and right behind it was Bernice's white Cadillac. My stomach tightened. Tuesday afternoons were not for family gatherings. Tuesday afternoons were for working people. The fact that they were all here in the middle of the work week meant only one thing. They were plotting. I did not pull into the driveway. I parked my car 2 houses down in front of a neighbor's property, who I knew was away on vacation. I slipped off my heels, holding them in my hand, and walked barefoot across the grass. I felt like a spy in my own life creeping toward the house I paid the utility bills for. I entered through the side door of the garage. It was unlocked. Derek never locked it despite my constant reminders. I stepped into the mudroom, the air conditioning hitting my skin, cooling the sweat on my neck. The house was silent except for voices drifting from the study down the hall. My study. Or rather, the room Derek called his office even though he only used it to watch sports highlights and hide credit card bills. I moved softly down the hallway, pressing my back against the wall. The door was cracked open just an inch. The smell of Bernice's heavy floral perfume seeped out, mixing with the scent of takeout food. I stopped breathing. I held my phone up, opened the voice memo app, and pressed record. The first voice I heard was Derek's. He sounded frantic, pacing the floor. "I cannot touch the trust, Mom. I tried to access it this morning. The bank said it is flagged. Simone must have put a freeze on it or moved the funds. I told you she is uptight about that money." Then came Bernice's voice, dripping with disdain. "So unfreeze it, Derek. You are the father. You have rights. That money belongs to the family, not just that broken child. It requires 2 signatures now." Derek sighed, the sound of a chair creaking as he slumped into it. "Her lawyer has to sign off. She blocked me, Mom. She knew I was going to use it." There was a pause, and then Tanisha chimed in, her mouth full of food. "So what are you going to do, big bro? You already put the offer in on the Hillside house. If you do not come up with a down payment by Friday, you lose the deal, and you lose face. People are already talking about how you are moving up. You cannot look broke now." I closed my eyes. They did not care about the morality of theft. They only cared about the optics of poverty. "I have a plan B," Derek said, his voice lowering. "But it is risky." "What is it?" Bernice demanded. "I can refinance this house. Our current house. I can take out a home equity line of credit. There is about $300,000 of equity in this place. I can pull it out as cash, use it for the down payment on the Hillside mansion, and then we figure out the rest later." I nearly dropped my phone. He was talking about leveraging the roof over his daughter's head. He was talking about stripping the equity I had built for 10 years to buy a palace for his mother. "But Simone is on the deed for this house too," Kyle's voice spoke up. I had not realized he was there too, lurking in the corner like a cockroach. "You need her signature to refinance." Derek laughed. It was the same laugh I heard in the teaser. Cold, dismissive, arrogant. "That is the easy part, Kyle. Simone is not so smart. She is book smart, sure. She knows numbers, but she is emotionally dumb. She is desperate to keep me. She is terrified of being a single mother with an autistic child. She thinks no one else will want her." My heart turned to stone in my chest. Is that what he thought? That I stayed out of desperation? Bernice cackled. It was a dry, scratching sound. "You are right, son. She is a worker bee. She follows orders. You just need to sweet-talk her, buy her some flowers, tell her you are doing this for the family future, tell her it is just some paperwork to lower the interest rate or something. She will sign. She always signs. And make sure," Tanisha added, her voice sharp with greed, "make sure when you buy the new house you put the deed in Mom's name only, or yours and Mom's. Do not put Simone's name on it. If you guys ever get divorced, I do not want her getting half of Mom's mansion. That house should stay in the King family." Kyle laughed. "Yeah, and make sure the guest house is ready for us. I need space for my crypto setup." "Listen to me, Derek." Bernice said, her tone serious now. "You do whatever you have to do to get that signature. Lie to her, gaslight her. I do not care. Just get the money. That girl has been holding you back for too long. She is a weight around your neck. We are your real family. We are the ones who believe in you." I leaned my head back against the wall. A single tear threatened to fall, but I wiped it away aggressively. I would not cry for them. Not one drop. I looked at the recording on my phone. 4 minutes and 32 seconds. I had everything. I had conspiracy to commit fraud. I had admission of intent to deceive. I had the raw, unfiltered truth of how they saw me. I was not a wife. I was a resource. I was an ATM with a pulse. I stopped the recording and uploaded it immediately to my secure cloud storage. Then I sent a copy to David. I slipped my shoes back on and walked backward, retracing my steps through the mudroom into the garage and out onto the grass. I walked back to my car, got in, and drove away without making a sound. My hands were steady on the steering wheel. My pulse was slow. The anger that had been burning inside me had transmuted into something much more useful. Resolve. I drove to a park a few miles away and sat on a bench overlooking a lake. I pulled out my phone and dialed David. This time I did not ask for advice. I gave orders. "David, did you get the file?" I asked. "Yes, Simone, I just listened to it." "My God, this is actionable." "It is more than actionable, David. It is war." "What do you want to do?" he asked. "I want you to prepare the paperwork for the Phoenix acquisition. Buy the debt on the Hillside house. Do it today. Pay whatever premium you have to. I want to be the one holding the leash when he walks into that closing meeting." "Consider it done," David said. "And what about the refinance he is planning?" "Let him try," I said, watching a duck glide across the water. "Prepare a document, a post-nuptial agreement amendment. Disguise it as a standard waiver for the loan application. Make it look boring. Make it look like standard legalese." "And what should it say?" David asked, his voice hesitant. "It should say that in exchange for my signature on any loan documents, the entirety of our current marital assets, including this house and his retirement accounts, are immediately transferred to my sole ownership." David whistled low. "That is a trap, Simone. If he signs that without reading it, he loses everything." "He said I was not smart, David," I replied, standing up and smoothing my skirt. "He said, I do not read the fine print. I am just giving him the chance to prove he is the genius he thinks he is." I hung up. I checked my makeup in the rearview mirror. I looked fresh. I looked calm. I looked like the perfect submissive wife. I drove back home, pulling into the driveway just as Tanisha and Bernice were leaving. They looked startled to see me. "Hey," Bernice said, fake smiling. "You are home early." "Headache," I lied, forcing a weak smile. "I just needed to rest." Derek came out of the house looking energized, like a man who had just formulated a master plan. He kissed my cheek. "Go lie down, babe. I will order pizza tonight. I have some paperwork for us to go over later, just some boring house stuff." I looked at him. I looked at the predator who thought he was hunting a rabbit, not realizing he had just stepped into a bear trap. "Okay, Derek," I said softly. "Whatever you say." I walked into the house past the room where they had plotted my destruction and went upstairs to sharpen my knives. Tonight I would sign his papers, and tonight he would sign away his life. My husband thinks I am upstairs sleeping off a headache. He thinks I am weak, fragile, and retreating from the world because I cannot handle the pressure of his success. He does not know that I am currently sitting in my home office, surrounded by 6 monitors liquidating his future. The room is dark, lit only by the blue glow of the screens. This is my cockpit. This is where I hunt. For the last decade, I have used these screens to track down millions of dollars in stolen assets for global corporations. I have found money hidden in offshore accounts in the Caymans. I have traced wire transfers through shell companies in shell countries. I have brought down CEOs who thought they were untouchable. And tonight, I am turning all that firepower onto one mediocre car salesman and his greedy mother. I opened the file named Phoenix Holdings. To the outside world, Phoenix Holdings is just another faceless limited liability company incorporated in Delaware. It has a registered agent, a generic mailing address, and a tax ID number that leads nowhere. But to me, it is a shield. I created Phoenix Holdings 3 years ago, shortly after Maya was diagnosed. I knew that in a world that saw my daughter as less than I needed to build a fortress around her that no one could breach. I named it Phoenix because that is Maya's middle name. It represents rising from the ashes. It represents survival. Until tonight, Phoenix Holdings was just a passive investment vehicle. It held some bonds, some index funds, a few quiet real estate investment trusts. But tonight it was waking up. I pulled up the listing for 120 Crestview Lane, the hillside mansion. On the screen it looked magnificent. The photos showed a sprawling Mediterranean estate with a terracotta roof, a circular driveway, and that double staircase Bernice had salivated over. It was listed at $1.2 million, a steal for that zip code. But in my line of work, if something looks too good to be true, it is usually a crime scene. I cracked my knuckles and started digging. I did not look at the glossy photos. I looked at the county records. I looked at the title history. I looked at the tax liens. It took me exactly 4 minutes to find what Derek had missed. The house was not just for sale. It was in pre-foreclosure. The current owner was a man named Marcus Thorne, a former tech entrepreneur who had lost everything in a bad merger 2 years ago. He had not paid his mortgage in 9 months. The bank had already filed a notice of default. The reason the price was so low was that the bank was desperate to offload the toxic asset before they had to go through the expensive hassle of a public auction. I leaned back in my chair, a cold smile touching my lips. Derek did not know this. Of course he did not. He was working with a real estate agent recommended by Kyle. I pulled up the agent's license number. Suspended twice for unethical practices. Reinstated 6 months ago. This agent was not looking out for Derek. He was looking for a quick commission on a dying property. He probably told Derek that he had to move fast, that there was a bidding war, that he needed to put down a massive non-refundable deposit to secure the deal. They were hustling him. And in his desperation to look like a king, he was walking right into the slaughterhouse. But here is where the game changes. When a property is in pre-foreclosure, the debt is often sold by the bank to private investors. Banks hate holding bad debt. It messes up their balance sheets. They would rather sell the note to a third party for 60 or 70 cents on the dollar just to get it off their books. I picked up my phone and called David. It was past midnight, but David answered on the first ring. He knew that when I called this late, money was moving. "Simone, tell me you are not doing what I think you are doing," David said, his voice rough with sleep. "I am looking at the Marcus Thorne note." "David," I said, my eyes scanning the foreclosure filings. "The primary lender is First City Bank. They are holding a non-performing note with a balance of $900,000. "You want to buy the house?" David asked. "No," I corrected him. "I want to buy the debt. I want to be the bank." There was a silence on the other end of the line. I could hear David sitting up, fumbling for his glasses. "Simone, if you buy the note, you become the lender. That means when Derek buys the house, he is not borrowing money from First City Bank." I finished for him. "He is borrowing money from Phoenix Holdings. He is borrowing money from me." "And since the house is already in default," David added, catching on to the brilliance of the plan, "you have the power to accelerate the foreclosure if the new buyer misses a single payment, or if the new buyer violates any terms of the mortgage agreement." "Exactly," I said. I typed a command into my terminal, pulling up the acquisition request forms. I want you to contact the asset manager at First City Bank first thing in the morning. Offer them $800,000 cash for the note. They will take it. They are desperate. Use the funds from my liquid investment account. Transfer them to Phoenix Holdings, then execute the purchase. But Simone David hesitated. Derek is going to put down a down payment. He is going to give $200,000 to the seller to clear the arrears. Let him, I said. Let him drain his accounts. Let him refinance our current home. Let him give everything he has to Marcus Thorne and the shady agent. Because once he signs those mortgage papers, he belongs to me. Every month, he will write a check to Phoenix Holdings, and the moment he is late, the moment he misses a due date, I will not send a warning letter. I will send the sheriff. David let out a low whistle. You are going to foreclose on your own husband and mother-in-law. I am going to foreclose on a bad investment, David, I said coldly. It is just business. I hit enter. The request was queued. By 10 a.m. tomorrow, Phoenix Holdings would be the legal lien holder of 120 Crestview Lane. I closed the file and opened a new window. I pulled up the live feed from the security cameras I had installed in our current house months ago. Not the ones Derek knew about, the hidden ones, the pinhole cameras in the smoke detectors. I saw Derek downstairs in the living room. He was on the phone, pacing back and forth. He looked manic. He was holding a glass of scotch in one hand and a stack of papers in the other. I zoomed in on the papers. It was the loan application for the refinance. He was actually doing it. He was going to strip the equity from the home where his daughter slept to buy a monument to his mother's vanity. I watched him hang up the phone and high-five Kyle, who had apparently come back over. We got this, bro. I could see Kyle mouthing the words. She will sign. She is clueless. I watched my husband laugh. It was a laugh of relief. A laugh of a man who thinks he has gotten away with murder. I turned off the monitor. The room plunged back into darkness. You are right, Derek, I whispered to the empty room. I am clueless. I am clueless about how you thought you could survive this. I stood up and walked over to the window. I looked out at the streetlights casting long shadows on the manicured lawns. I thought about Maya sleeping in her room down the hall. I thought about the way Bernice had looked at her, like she was garbage, like she was a mistake. Phoenix Holdings was not just a shell company anymore. It was a weapon, and I had just loaded the chamber. I walked back to my desk and printed out a single document. It was a standard-looking addendum. A waiver of spousal rights required by lenders when a married couple separates their financial liability. It looked boring. It looked dense. It was written in size 8 font. But buried in paragraph 4, clause B, was a stipulation that triggered an automatic transfer of assets in the event of unauthorized withdrawal of marital funds. I placed the paper on top of my laptop. Tomorrow, Derek would bring me his pile of lies to sign, and I would hand him his death sentence wrapped in a smile. I turned off the lights and left the office. As I walked down the hall, I felt lighter than I had in years. The victim was gone. The wife was gone. Only the auditor remained. And the audit was about to begin. The bedroom was quiet, but it was the silence of a courtroom before the verdict is read. I sat up in bed, propped against the plush velvet headboard, reading a novel I had not turned the page of in 20 minutes. I was wearing my silk pajamas, the expensive ones Derek liked, playing the part of the trophy wife he desperately wanted me to be. My heart was beating a slow, steady rhythm against my ribs. It was not fear. It was anticipation. The door handle turned. Derek walked in. He had changed out of his work suit into sweatpants and a t-shirt, trying to project a casual, relaxed vibe. But I knew better. In his hand, he held a thick manila envelope. He held it carefully, almost reverently, like it contained the nuclear codes. In a way, for him it did. He sat on the edge of the bed, the mattress dipping under his weight. He smelled of mint toothpaste and ambition. He placed the envelope on the nightstand and turned to me with a smile that did not quite reach his eyes. "Hey, babe," he said softly, reaching out to stroke my arm. "How is the headache?" "Better," I lied, closing my book. "The medicine helped." "Good," he said. "I hate seeing you in pain. You do so much for this family, Simone. I know I was a little harsh at dinner the other night. The pressure of the deal was getting to me. I just want to give us the best life possible. You know that, right?" I looked at him. I looked at the man who had called me defective 2 days ago. The man who had plotted with his mother to strip me of my assets. "I know, Derek," I said, making my voice sound small. "I know you work hard." He exhaled, shoulders dropping as if a weight had been lifted. He reached for the envelope. "Since you are feeling better, I wanted to go over that paperwork I mentioned. It is time sensitive. If we do not get this submitted by tomorrow morning, we might lose the lock on the interest rate for the renovation loan." "Renovation loan?" I asked, tilting my head in feigned confusion. "I thought you were refinancing to buy the hillside house." He froze for a millisecond, then recovered. "Well, yes. It is a bridge loan. We pull equity out of this house to secure the new one, and then we refinance everything into one package later. It is complicated financial structuring, babe. It is what wealthy people do to minimize tax exposure. You do not need to worry about the mechanics. I just need your signature as the co-owner of this property." He pulled a stack of documents out of the envelope. It was thick, at least 30 pages. He had clipped them together with a heavy binder clip. He handed me a pen. A heavy, expensive Mont Blanc pen that he had bought for himself as a promotion gift last year. "Just sign where the sticky tabs are," he said, flipping the pages open. "Here, here, and here." I took the pen. I took the heavy stack of paper onto my lap. "Derek," I said, biting my lip nervously. "This is a lot of paper. Should I read it first?" Derek laughed. It was a gentle, patronizing sound. "Babe, it is standard boilerplate legalese. If you read it, you will be asleep in 5 minutes. It just says that you authorize me to act as the primary borrower and that you agree to the lien on the house. Trust me. I read it 3 times. It is safe." I looked down at the first page. Home Equity Line of Credit Agreement. I flipped to the second page. Borrower Authorization. I flipped to the third page. Power of Attorney. He had buried it. He had hidden the power of attorney document inside the loan application. If I signed this, I would be giving him the legal right to sign my name on anything. He could sell my car. He could drain my personal accounts. He could take out loans in my name without me ever knowing. This was not just theft, this was slavery. I felt a cold rage spread through my chest, but I kept my face blank. "Derek," I said, pointing to a paragraph on page 3, "what does unrestricted access mean?" He sighed, leaning in close, invading my personal space. "It just means I can talk to the bank without dragging you to the branch every time they need a fax. It is for convenience, Simone. Do you want to take days off work to sit in a bank lobby?" "No," I whispered. "I hate banks." "Exactly," he smiled. "So sign." I held the pen over the paper. I let the tip hover just millimeters above the signature line. Derek was holding his breath. I could see his eyes locked on the pen tip, hungry, desperate. I coughed. A dry, hacking cough. "Oh my God," I wheezed, clutching my throat. "I need water. My throat is so dry." Derek looked annoyed. "Can't you sign first?" I coughed again, louder this time, turning away from him. "I can't breathe. Please, Derek. Ice water." He groaned, standing up from the bed. "You are so dramatic, Simone." "Fine. Do not move. I will be right back." He walked out of the bedroom. I listened to his heavy footsteps going down the stairs. I counted. 1, 2, 3. I moved with the speed of a viper striking. I reached under my pillow where I had hidden a single sheet of paper earlier that evening. It was printed on the exact same paper stock as Derek's loan documents. Same font, same margins, same header. I flipped to page 4 of Derek's stack. Page 4 was the continuation of the power of attorney. I ripped page 4 out of the binder clip. It made a tiny tearing sound, but the air conditioner covered it. I crumpled it and shoved it into the waistband of my pajama pants under my shirt. I slid my document into the stack. I aligned the edges perfectly. I smoothed it down. My document was titled Amendment to Asset Distribution and Spousal Liability. It read in very dense legal language. In the event that Party A, Derek utilizes marital funds or leverage from the marital home for the purchase of any secondary property without the express written consent of Party B, Simone, on the deed of said secondary property, Party A agrees to the immediate and irrevocable forfeiture of all interest in the primary marital residence. Furthermore, Party A assumes 100% liability for any debt incurred on the secondary property. In simple English, if he used our house to buy his mom a mansion, he was giving me our house for free, and he would be stuck with the debt for the new place. I flipped the page back to page 3. I sat back against the headboard. I picked up the pen. Derek walked back into the room holding a glass of water. He looked suspicious. He looked at me, then at the papers. Here, he said, handing me the glass. Thank you, I said, taking a long, slow sip. The water was cold. It felt good. Are you okay now? He asked. Yes, I said. I am ready. I put the glass down. I looked at him one last time. Derek, I said softly, are you sure this is the right thing to do? For our family? He sat back down, putting his hand over mine. Simone, look at me. I am doing this for us. I am building a legacy. You just have to trust me. Do you trust me? I looked at the man who was trying to rob me blind. Yes, Derek, I said. I trust you completely. I lowered the pen. I signed my name on page 1, then page 2, then page 3. I flipped to page 4. My page, the trap. There was a sticky tab right where I needed to sign. Derek had put it there on the original document. It lined up perfectly with the signature line on my forgery. I signed my name, Simone King. The letters flowed smoothly in blue ink. I handed the pen back to him. Done, I said. Derek grabbed the papers. He did not check them. He did not read them. He was so arrogant, so sure of his intellectual superiority, that he did not even glance at what I had just signed. He closed the envelope. He grinned a wide, triumphant grin that made him look predatory. Good girl, he said. You did good, Simone. Now we can finally move forward. He stood up, clutching the envelope to his chest. I am going to go put this in the safe, he said. I will take it to the bank first thing in the morning. You should, I said. Do not be late. He leaned down and kissed my forehead. It was a kiss of victory. Get some sleep, babe. You look tired. He walked out of the room. I listened to him walk down the hall to his office. I heard the beep of the safe keypad. I heard the heavy clunk of the safe door closing. He had just locked away his own destruction. I waited until the house was silent again. I pulled the crumpled page 4 out of my waistband. I walked into the ensuite bathroom. I tore it into tiny pieces. I threw them into the toilet. I flushed. I watched the swirling water take away the power of attorney. I watched the water take away his control. I walked back into the bedroom and turned off the lamp. I lay in the dark, staring at the ceiling. Tomorrow he would go to the bank. He would submit the paperwork. The bank officer would scan it. They would not read it closely either. They never do. They just want the commission. The loan would be approved. The money would be transferred. And the moment that money hit the account of Phoenix Holdings to pay for the debt on the hillside house, the trap would snap shut. Derek thought he had just tricked his dumb wife into giving him everything. He did not know that he had just signed a confession. I closed my eyes, and for the first time in days I slept peacefully. The audit was complete. Now it was time for the sentencing. Moving day arrived with the humidity of a sauna and the chaos of a circus. I stood in the driveway of 120 Crestview Lane, watching the movers heave a grand piano up the front steps. It was a piano that no one in the King family knew how to play, but Derek insisted on buying it because the listing agent said it added sophistication to the foyer. I held a clipboard in my hand, checking off boxes, playing the role of the dutiful administrative assistant that my husband believed me to be. Derek was standing by the moving truck wearing a polo shirt that was too tight around the biceps, shouting directions at men who were doing this job long before he was born. "Careful with that sofa," he yelled, pointing a finger. "That is Italian leather. It costs more than your truck." I watched the movers roll their eyes. I stayed silent. I was not there to manage the move. I was there to document the damages. Every scratch on the hardwood floors, every ding in the drywall, I noted it all. Not as a concerned homeowner, but as a landlord preparing to withhold a security deposit. The hillside mansion was impressive, I had to admit. It sat on a hill overlooking the city, a sprawling monument to excess with its stucco walls and terracotta roof. It was the kind of house that screamed new money. It was perfect for Derek. But the peace of the morning was shattered when the caravan arrived. It started with the honking. Bernice's white Cadillac rolled up the driveway, followed closely by a rusty U-Haul truck driven by Kyle with Tanisha following in her sedan. Derek jogged over to open his mother's car door. Bernice stepped out wearing a wide-brimmed hat and oversized sunglasses, looking like a celebrity avoiding the paparazzi. She did not carry a box. She carried her purse and a toy poodle named Prince that she had adopted last week, just to match the new house. "Welcome home, Mom," Derek said, spreading his arms wide. Bernice looked up at the house. She lowered her sunglasses. A smile spread across her face, greedy and satisfied. Finally, she sighed. "A house worthy of the king name. You did good, Derek. You finally did good." She walked past me without a word. I was part of the scenery, less important than the potted plants by the door. I followed them inside. The foyer was massive, with a double staircase that curved up to a balcony. A crystal chandelier hung from the ceiling, catching the light. Bernice spun around in the center of the room, her heels clicking on the marble. "I will take the master suite on the east wing," she announced. "The morning light is better for my complexion." Derek cleared his throat nervously. "Actually, Mom, I thought Simone and I would take the master. Since you know we are paying the mortgage, there is a beautiful guest suite on the first floor with a garden view." Bernice stopped spinning. She looked at her son with a look of pure betrayal. "The guest suite," she repeated, her voice rising. "You want to put your mother in the guest suite? After everything I have done for you, I raised you, Derek. I sacrificed my life for you. And now when you finally make it, you want to shove me downstairs like the help." Derek shrank. He physically seemed to lose 2 inches of height. "No, Mom, of course not," he stammered. "I just thought—" Bernice looked at me. Her eyes narrowed. "It is her, isn't it? She wants the master. She wants to look down on me." I stood there holding my clipboard. I did not want the master suite. I did not want to sleep in this house at all. I knew that every night spent here was racking up debt that Derek could never repay. "It is fine, Derek," I said calmly. "Let her have the master. We can take the second bedroom." Derek looked relieved. Bernice looked triumphant. "See," she chirped. "Even Simone knows her place. Come on, Prince. Let's go inspect my quarters." She marched up the stairs, leaving Derek and me in the foyer. But the invasion was just beginning. Kyle and Tanisha walked in carrying nothing but a bag of fast food. "Yo, this place is sick," Kyle yelled, his voice echoing off the high ceilings. "The acoustics are crazy." He walked over to Derek and slapped him on the back. "Proud of you, bro. We are going to live like kings here." I stepped forward. "We?" Tanisha chimed in, munching on a fry. "Yeah, didn't Derek tell you? Our lease is up at the apartment, and since this place has so much room, we figured we would crash here for a few weeks until we find a new spot. Save some money, you know." "A few weeks," I repeated. "Just until I get my crypto mining rig set up," Kyle said, winking. "I need a dedicated space. The garage is perfect. It has that heavy-duty wiring. I am going to turn this place into a Bitcoin factory, Derek. We are going to be rich." I looked at Derek. He refused to meet my eyes. He had known about this. He had planned this. He was moving his entire dysfunctional clan into the house he bought with stolen equity, and he hadn't told me because he knew I would object. But he forgot that I had signed the papers. He forgot that I had signed the trap. Sure, I said, forcing a tight smile. The garage is all yours, Kyle. Kyle pumped his fist. Sweet. Simone, be a doll and tell the movers to bring my heavy boxes to the garage. They are marked fragile. Computer equipment. He did not ask. He ordered. For the next 6 hours, I was not the lady of the house. I was the concierge. Bernice shouted from the upstairs balcony. Simone. Where are my towels? The Egyptian cotton ones, not the cheap ones you use, Tanisha yelled from the kitchen. Simone. How do you work this coffee machine? It is too complicated. Make me a latte. Derek was busy giving a tour of the pool to the neighbors, pretending he was the lord of the manor, leaving me to manage the chaos inside. But the breaking point came when I went to check on Maya. We had chosen a small, quiet room at the back of the house for her. It had a bay window that looked out onto the woods. I knew the trees would calm her. I had labeled her boxes clearly. Maya's room. Fragile. I walked down the hall and saw the door to her room was open. Bernice was standing inside. She was directing 2 movers. No, take that bed out, she commanded. This room has the best closet space. I am turning this into my dressing room. Put those boxes in the storage closet down the hall. My heart stopped. I saw the movers lifting Maya's sensory swing, the one thing that helped her sleep at night. Stop, I said, my voice shaking with suppressed rage. Bernice turned around. Oh, there you are. Tell these men to hurry up. I need to hang my furs. This is Maya's room, Bernice, I said, stepping into the room. We agreed. It is the quietest room in the house. She needs the quiet. Bernice laughed. It was a cruel, dismissive sound. She does not need a bay window to line up her toy cars, Simone. She can do that in the storage room. It has no windows, so she won't be distracted. It is better for her. Besides, I need this natural light for my makeup. She wants to put my autistic daughter in a windowless storage closet so she can have better lighting for her vanity. I looked at the movers. They looked uncomfortable. They were big men, but they were afraid of this small, vicious woman. Put the bed down, I said to the movers. Excuse me, Bernice snapped. I said, put the bed down. This is my daughter's room. Bernice marched up to me. She poked a manicured finger into my chest. This is my house, Simone. My son bought it for me. His name is on the deed. Yours is not. I checked. So unless you want to find yourself sleeping in the storage closet, I suggest you get out of my way. I looked at her finger. I wanted to break it. But I remembered the plan. I remembered Phoenix Holdings. I took a deep breath. You are right, Bernice, I said softly. It is Derek's house. I signaled to the movers. Take the bed to the storage room. Bernice smiled. A smile of pure victory. That is a good girl, she said, patting my cheek. Now run downstairs and make me some iced tea. I am parched. I walked out of the room. I walked down the hall to the small windowless storage room where the movers had dumped Maya's things. I found Maya sitting in the corner clutching her blue car, rocking back and forth. She was terrified. The noise, the new smells, the hostility. It was overwhelming her. I sat down on the floor next to her. I pulled her into my lap. I am sorry, baby, I whispered into her hair. I am so sorry. Just a little longer. I pulled out my phone. I had an alert from my bank. Transaction complete. Phoenix Holdings has successfully acquired the mortgage note for 120 Crestview Lane. I looked at the screen. I looked at the walls of the storage closet. They thought they had won. Bernice thought she was the queen. Derek thought he was the king. Tanisha and Kyle thought they were the court jesters living on the royal dime. They did not know that the castle was built on quicksand. And I was the one holding the shovel. I stood up. I wiped my face. I took Maya's hand. Come on, sweetie, I said. Let's go make Grandma some tea. We walked downstairs. The living room was full of laughter. Derek had opened a bottle of champagne. He was toasting with Kyle and Tanisha. To the good life, Derek shouted. To family, Kyle yelled. Simone, come join us. Derek waved me over. Grab a glass. I walked into the kitchen. I made the iced tea. I put extra ice in it, just the way Bernice liked it. I walked out to the living room and handed the glass to my mother-in-law. She took it without saying thank you. She took a sip and frowned. Too much lemon, she muttered. But it will do. I stood by the wall watching them celebrate, watching them get drunk on hubris. Kyle was already talking about drilling holes in the garage wall for ventilation for his servers. Derek was talking about hosting a massive housewarming party next week. I pulled up my calendar on my phone. Next week. The housewarming party. Perfect. I sent a text to David. Prepare the foreclosure notice, but do not mail it. Hand deliver it next Saturday night. At 8 p.m. David replied instantly. During the party? That is cold, Simone. I looked at Bernice, who was currently wiping her wet glass on one of my throw pillows. It is not cold, David, I typed back. It is justice. I put my phone away and smiled. Can I get anyone anything else, I asked. No, we are good, Derek said, dismissing me with a wave of his hand. Go relax, you look stressed. I turned and walked away. I went back to the storage closet. I sat with my daughter in the dark. Enjoy the master suite, Bernice, I thought. Enjoy the view. Because the fall from the top is going to be a long one. 1 month. That is how long it took for the gilded cage to start rusting. Living in the hillside mansion was supposed to be the pinnacle of Derek's existence the moment he finally ascended to the throne he believed he deserved. But from where I stood scrubbing the marble countertops of a kitchen that cost more than my college tuition, it looked a lot less like a palace, and a lot more like a prison. And the warden wore Chanel knockoffs and demanded fresh squeezed orange juice every 2 hours. Life had settled into a rhythm that was suffocatingly predictable. My mother-in-law Bernice had fully embraced her role as the matriarch of the manor. She spent her days lounging by the pool I paid for, ordering items from shopping channels and treating me like the hired help. Tanisha and Kyle had turned the guest wing into a frat house, leaving pizza boxes on the silk rugs and blasting music that shook the crystal chandelier in the foyer. And Derek was a ghost. A sweaty, pale, terrified ghost haunting his own hallways. He thought he was hiding it. He thought that by wearing his expensive suits and shouting into his phone about closing deals he was maintaining the illusion of control. But I knew better. I knew because every morning, like clockwork, the mailman delivered a white envelope stamped with a red logo. A stylized bird rising from flames. Phoenix Holdings. I watched him from the top of the stairs that Tuesday morning. He was standing by the front door sorting through the mail. He flipped past the utility bills, past the junk mail, and stopped when he saw the red bird. His shoulders went rigid. He looked around quickly, checking to see if anyone was watching. He did not see me standing in the shadows of the landing. He tore the envelope open right there in the foyer. I knew exactly what that letter said. I had drafted it myself the night before in my office. Notice of default. It was a warning regarding the mortgage payments on our old house. The house we had moved out of but not sold. The house Derek had refinanced to get the cash for this monstrosity. In his desperation to keep the lights on in the mansion, he had stopped paying the note on the bungalow. He thought he could juggle the balls. He thought he could skip a month or two and catch up later when his imaginary big commission check came in. But Phoenix Holdings does not believe in grace periods. I watched him crumble. He leaned against the heavy oak door, sliding down slightly as he read the bold print, demanding immediate payment of arrears plus penalties. $5,000, due immediately, or foreclosure proceedings would begin. He rubbed his face with his hands, a gesture of pure exhaustion. Then he did exactly what I knew he would do. He pulled out his phone. I quietly retreated to my bedroom and sat on the edge of the bed. I placed my phone on the nightstand next to me and waited. 1 minute passed, then 2. Buzz. The screen lit up. A notification from our joint savings account. Alert withdrawal of $5,000 initiated via mobile transfer. I picked up the phone and smiled. It was a cold, sharp smile that never reached my eyes. Violation number 1. According to the amendment I had tricked him into signing hidden within the loan documents, any withdrawal of marital funds over $500 for non-approved expenses triggered the penalty clause. He had just used our joint savings money that was technically half mine to pay a debt that was solely his liability under the new terms. He thought he was putting out a fire. In reality, he was pouring gasoline on himself and handing me the match. I opened my notes app. I had a list titled The Ledger. I typed in the date, the amount, and the violation code. Then I locked the phone and went downstairs to make coffee. When I entered the kitchen, Derek was already there. He was chugging a glass of water, looking like he had just run a marathon. He jumped when he saw me. "Oh, hey, babe," he stammered, hiding his phone behind his back. "You are up early." I walked over to the coffee machine, moving with the slow, deliberate pace of a woman who has nowhere to go. "Good morning, Derek," I said. "You look flushed. Is everything okay?" He forced a laugh. It sounded like dry leaves crunching. Yeah, everything is great. Just market volatility. You know how it is. Stress of the job." I nodded sympathetically. Of course. It must be so hard managing all those assets. By the way, I noticed the balance in the savings account dropped this morning. Did we have a bill auto-pay? His eyes widened in panic. He licked his lips. "Oh, that. Yeah, I moved some money to an investment account. A short-term bond. Very high yield." I did not want to miss the window. It is too complicated to explain, but trust me, it is going to double in 6 months. I turned around to face him, leaning my hip against the counter. "That sounds amazing, Derek. You are so smart with money. I am so glad I let you handle everything." He exhaled, the tension leaving his body. He bought it. He actually believed that I, a forensic auditor who tracked international money laundering for a living, would believe that a $5,000 transfer to a debt collector was a high-yield bond. His arrogance was truly his Achilles heel. Just then, Bernice swept into the kitchen. She was wearing a silk robe with feathers on the sleeves, looking like a villain from a soap opera. She dropped a stack of glossy magazines on the island. "Simone, coffee. Now. And make it stronger than yesterday. That dishwater you served me was an insult." "Yes, Bernice," I said, reaching for a mug. "Derek, honey," she continued, ignoring me completely. "We need to talk about the housewarming party. It is next Saturday, and I have decided we need to upgrade the catering. Tanisha said that plastic plates are tacky. We need full silver service and a jazz band. I found a band that charges $3,000 for the night. You can book them today, right?" Derek turned pale again. I could practically hear the gears grinding in his head. He had just drained the savings to pay the mortgage on the old house. He had zero liquidity. "Mom," he started, his voice cracking. "A band. That is a lot. Maybe we could just use a DJ. Kyle has some speakers in the garage." "A DJ?" Bernice shrieked. She looked at him with pure disgust. "This is Hillside, Derek, not the ghetto. Do you want the neighbors to think we are trash? Do you want Deacon Jones to go back to church and tell everyone that the Kings are throwing a block party?" "No, Mom." But nothing, she snapped. "You promised me this life. You promised me we would live like royalty. Unless—" She paused, narrowing her eyes. "Unless you can't afford it. Unless you lied to me." The room went silent. This was the trigger. Bernice knew exactly how to manipulate him. She questioned his manhood, his success, his ability to provide. Derek straightened up. He puffed out his chest despite the fear in his eyes. "Of course I can afford it, Mom. Do not be ridiculous. I wanted to be prudent. But you are right. You deserve the best. I will book the band." Bernice clapped her hands. "Good. And Simone, you need to coordinate with the caterer. I want lobster thermidor. And do not get the frozen kind." I handed her the coffee. "Lobster thermidor," I repeated. That sounds expensive, Bernice. Derek, do we have the budget for that? Derek glared at me. Shut up, Simone. I said I got it. Just do what Mom says. Stop counting pennies. I lowered my eyes. Okay, Derek. I just do not want you to worry about money. I walked out of the kitchen to check on Maya, leaving my husband trapped between his mother's greed and his own lies. That afternoon, my phone buzzed again. Alert withdrawal of $3,500 initiated via credit card cash advance. I checked the card. It was a card in my name that I had authorized him to use for emergencies only. A cash advance carried a 25% interest rate. It was financial suicide. Violation number 2. Unauthorized accumulation of debt in spouse's name. I added it to the ledger. Later that evening, the atmosphere in the house was manic. Kyle was drilling holes in the garage wall, tapping into the main power line for his crypto servers. The lights in the kitchen flickered every time he turned on a rig. Tanisha was in the living room live streaming a tour of her new house to her 12 followers, showing off furniture she didn't own. I found Maya in the pantry. She was hiding behind the shelves of organic pasta that Bernice insisted we buy but never ate. She was covering her ears. Too loud, Mommy, she whispered. Too loud. I sat down on the floor with her. I knew the feeling. The noise of their entitlement was deafening. I checked my phone one last time before bed. Another email from Phoenix Holdings had been sent to Derek's personal email address. I had access to it, of course. He used the same password for everything King Derek won. The email was a final notice for the new house, the Hillside Mansion. He had paid the deposit, but the first mortgage payment was due in 3 days. And he was broke. I could hear him pacing in the office next door. He was on the phone, his voice hushed and desperate. Come on, man, I just need a short-term loan. 2 weeks. I am good for it. What do you mean my credit is shot? He was running out of options. He had tapped the savings. He had tapped the credit cards. There was only one source of funds left, the retirement account. I knew he was thinking about it. I knew he was looking at the penalty fees and weighing them against the shame of being exposed as a fraud at his mother's party. Go ahead, Derek, I thought, listening to him slam the phone down. Do it. The next morning it happened. Alert liquidation of 401k assets. Pending transfer. He had done it. He had cashed out his entire future to pay for a party and a mortgage payment on a house he did not even own. Violation number 3. The final nail. According to the post-ENUP amendment, the liquidation of retirement assets without spousal consent resulted in the immediate transfer of full custody of any minor children and sole ownership of all remaining marital property to the aggrieved spouse. I sat at the kitchen table drinking my tea. Derek walked in looking lighter, almost manic. He thought he had solved the problem. He thought he had bought himself another month of pretending to be a king. Morning, beautiful, he said, kissing the top of my head. He was in a good mood. The money had hit his account. Did you book the band, I asked. Done and done, he grinned. It is going to be the party of the century, Simone. Wait until you see. Everyone is going to be talking about us. Oh, I am sure they will, I said, smiling into my cup. I am sure they will talk about this for a very long time. He grabbed a bagel and headed out the door, whistling. I watched him go. I felt a strange sense of pity. Not for him, but for the version of him that might have existed if he hadn't been so consumed by the need to impress people who did not love him. I picked up my phone and called David. He liquidated the 401k, I said. David let out a low whistle. He is all in. He is all out, I corrected. David is the foreclosure notice ready for the party. Printed and ready to serve, David said. I hired a process server. He will be dressed as a guest. Perfect, I said. And David, add one more thing to the file. What is that divorce papers? I hung up. I looked around the kitchen. I looked at the mess Tanisha had left on the counter. I looked at the list of demands Bernice had stuck to the fridge. I stood up and started cleaning. I scrubbed the counters. I swept the floor. I folded the towels. I played my part perfectly. Let them have their party. Let them have their lobster and their jazz band. Let them dance on the deck of the Titanic. I was just arranging the lifeboats. And there were only 2 seats, one for me and one for Maya. Saturday morning arrived with the subtlety of a marching band in a library. The sun had barely risen over the terracotta roof of the hillside mansion before the house was invaded by an army of florists, caterers, and most insufferably the entire senior choir of the Greater Ebenezer Baptist Church. Bernice had decided that a simple housewarming was not enough. She needed a consecration. She needed to parade her newfound wealth in front of the very people she had spent decades gossiping about. She wanted Deacon Jones to see the marble floors. She wanted Sister Patterson to choke on her envy while eating the lobster thermidor. I stood on the balcony overlooking the foyer, watching the spectacle below. Bernice was standing in the center of the room wearing a white suit and a hat so large it practically had its own zip code. She was directing the choir director, waving her hand as if she were the conductor of the London Symphony Orchestra. "No, no," she shouted, her voice echoing off the high ceilings. "I want the sopranos on the staircase. They need to look like angels descending from heaven when I make my entrance. And make sure they do not scuff the wood." I walked down the stairs, dodging a florist, who was carrying a vase of white lilies that looked suspiciously like a funeral arrangement. The air smelled of expensive perfume and desperation. Derek was in the living room arguing with the bartender. He was wearing a tuxedo. At 10 in the morning. He looked exhausted, his eyes rimmed with red, his skin pale and clammy. The stress of the financial tightrope he was walking was eating him alive from the inside out, but he was still trying to play the role of the benevolent king. "Make sure the champagne keeps flowing," Derek barked at the bartender. "I do not want to see an empty glass in anyone's hand. Top shelf only." I walked into the kitchen to get a glass of water. Tanisha was there stealing hors d'oeuvres off a tray before the guests arrived. She was wearing a dress that cost more than my first car, bought no doubt with the credit card Derek had given her yesterday. "You better get changed," Simone, Tanisha said with her mouth full. "The guests will be here in 4 hours. You look like the help." "I am wearing the help's uniform because I am the only one doing any work," I thought, but I stayed silent. I grabbed a bottle of water and turned to leave. That was when Bernice marched into the kitchen. She looked manic. Her eyes were wide, her pupils dilated with the drug of attention. "Simone." "There you are," she snapped. "We have a problem." "What is it, Bernice?" I asked. "It is the girl," she said, wrinkling her nose, as if she smelled something foul. "You mean Maya," I corrected her. "My daughter. Your granddaughter." Bernice waved her hand dismissively. "Yes, Maya. Whatever. Listen. Deacon Jones is bringing the Bishop Simone. This is a very high-profile event. We cannot have any interruptions." I felt the hair on the back of my neck stand up. I knew where this was going. "What do you mean by interruptions, Bernice?" "You know how she gets," Bernice said, lowering her voice to a conspiratorial whisper. "The hand flapping, the noises, the way she stares at people. It makes people uncomfortable. It ruins the aesthetic. I want everything to be perfect today." So I continued, my voice dropping to a dangerous chill. "So I have decided that Maya should stay in her room during the party," Bernice announced, adjusting her hat in the reflection of the microwave. "Tanisha said she can lend Maya her iPad. She can watch cartoons with her headphones on. We will lock the door so she does not wander out and accidentally knock over a waiter or scare the bishop." "You want to lock my autistic daughter in a room for 6 hours so you can impress a bishop who does not even know your name?" I asked. "It is for her own good," Bernice insisted. "She will be happier in there. She hates crowds." I slammed the water bottle down on the counter. The sound was like a gunshot. Tanisha jumped. Bernice took a step back. "No," I said. "Excuse me," Bernice gasped. I said no. This is her home. She lives here. If she wants to come downstairs and eat cake, she will come downstairs. If she wants to line up her toy cars on the coffee table, she will do it. I am not hiding my child to protect your fragile ego." Bernice's face turned a shade of purple I had never seen before. You do not tell me what to do in my house, she hissed. Actually, I do, I said, taking a step toward her. Because without me, this house would not function. I am the one who cleaned the bathrooms this morning because you were too cheap to hire a maid service on top of the caterers. I am the one managing the vendors. Maya stays. Bernice let out a screech that summoned Derek from the living room. He ran in looking panicked. What is happening? He yelled. Mom, are you okay? She is attacking me. Derek, Bernice cried, pointing a trembling finger at me. She is trying to ruin my big day. She insists on bringing that retard child down to embarrass us in front of the bishop. The slur hung in the air. It was ugly. It was hateful. It was unforgivable. I looked at Derek. I waited for him to defend his daughter. I waited for him to tell his mother that she had crossed a line that could never be uncrossed. Instead, Derek turned on me. His face was twisted with stress and rage. The veins in his neck were bulging. He was a man on the edge of a cliff, and he needed someone to push. Simone, stop it, he shouted. Just do what Mom says. Did you hear what she called our daughter Derek? I asked, my voice shaking. I do not care, he screamed, closing the distance between us. I do not care about your feelings right now. I have 50 people coming in 3 hours. I have leveraged everything I own for this night. I need this to go perfectly. If Mom wants Maya in the room, Maya stays in the room. No, I said firmly. Derek snapped. He grabbed my arm. His grip was hard, bruising. He yanked me toward the door. Get out of my face, Simone, he growled. You are so selfish. You are always trying to make everything about you. You are jealous because my mother is finally getting the shine she deserves. Let go of me, Derek, I said, trying to pull away. He did not let go. He shoved me. It was not a gentle push. It was a violent, aggressive shove. I stumbled back. My heel caught on the edge of the kitchen mat. I fell hard against the island, my hip colliding with the granite countertop with a sickening thud. The room went silent. Tanisha covered her mouth. Bernice looked shocked but not sorry. I gasped, the pain radiating down my leg. I looked up at my husband. He was breathing heavily, his hands curled into fists. He looked at me not with concern but with contempt. You know what, he spat. You are lucky I even let you stay here. This is my mother's house. I bought it. I paid for it. You are just a guest, so if you cannot follow the rules, you can get out. I stood up slowly. My hip was throbbing. My arm was already starting to bruise where he had grabbed me. I looked at Derek. I looked at Bernice. I looked at Tanisha. I saw them for exactly what they were. They were not family. They were parasites. They were monsters dressed in silk and tuxedos. Is that how it is, Derek? I asked quietly. This is your mother's house. Yes, he said, adjusting his tuxedo jacket, regaining his composure. It is. And tonight, she is the queen, so either get with the program or get lost. I looked him dead in the eye. Okay, Derek. I understand perfectly. I walked out of the kitchen. I did not run. I did not cry. I walked with a spine of steel. I went upstairs to Maya's room, the storage closet they had forced her into. I found her sitting on her bed with her headphones on, oblivious to the violence that had just occurred downstairs. I kissed her forehead. Mommy has to make a phone call, baby, I whispered. Everything is going to be okay. I walked into the master bathroom, Bernice's bathroom. I locked the door. I looked at myself in the mirror. I saw the red mark on my arm. I saw the fire in my eyes. He had put his hands on me. He had chosen his mother's vanity over his daughter's dignity and his wife's safety. He wanted a show. He wanted a spectacle. He wanted everyone to know who owned this house. Fine. I would give him exactly what he wanted. I pulled out my phone. I opened my text thread with David. My thumb hovered over the screen. For 10 years I had tried. I had tried to be the good wife. I had tried to buy their love. I had tried to fix them. But you cannot fix something that is rotten to the core. You have to cut it out. I typed the message. Subject foreclosure. Message: execute the order. Tonight, 8 p.m. During the bishop's toast, bring the sheriff. And bring the eviction notice. David replied instantly. Are you sure, Simone? Once we start this, there is no going back. I looked at the bruise forming on my arm. I am not going back, David. Burn it down. I hit send. I unlocked the bathroom door and walked out. I could hear the choir downstairs warming up. They were singing Victory is Mine. I smiled. Sing loud, Bernice. Sing loud. Because by the time the sun goes down, the only thing you will own is the silence. By 8 o'clock, the air in the mansion was thick enough to choke on. It smelled of expensive perfume, lobster butter, and the sweaty desperation of people trying too hard to impress each other. The jazz band was earning every cent of their exorbitant fee, blasting a saxophone solo that vibrated against the crystal stemware. I stood in the corner near the kitchen door, holding a silver tray of empty champagne flutes, invisible in my own home. Bernice was in her element. She moved through the crowd like a ship cutting through water, the train of her white gown sweeping across the marble floors. She stopped to accept compliments from Deacon Jones. She laughed too loudly at the bishop's jokes, and she made sure to introduce Derek to everyone as the CEO of a company that did not exist. Derek looked like he was about to vibrate out of his skin. He was on his fifth glass of scotch. His tuxedo was starting to look rumpled, his tie slightly askew. He kept checking his phone, probably hoping for a miracle wire transfer from heaven, but he kept the smile plastered on his face. It was a rictus of terror. In the corner near the grand piano, Kyle was holding his phone up on a selfie stick. He was live streaming to his 12 followers, shouting over the music. Yo, what is up, crypto fam? We are live from the mansion. Check out this spread. We got lobster. We got wagyu. This is how we live. This is the king lifestyle. Don't not forget to like and subscribe for more alpha male content. Tanisha was right beside him, posing with a glass of champagne she had not paid for, adjusting her dress to make sure the label was showing. I checked my watch. 7:58. I looked up at the ceiling. The recessed lighting was dim and moody, perfectly illuminating the lies below. Bernice tapped her spoon against her glass. The sharp ringing sound cut through the jazz. She waved her hand at the bandleader, silencing the music. The room fell quiet. All eyes turned to the staircase where Bernice had positioned herself, standing a few steps up so she could look down on everyone. Family, friends, distinguished guests, she began, her voice trembling with theatrical emotion. Thank you for being here tonight to celebrate this milestone. She paused for effect, wiping a non-existent tear from her eye. For years I prayed for this day. I prayed for a home that reflected the grace and favor of the Lord. And today my prayers have been answered, not through luck, but through the hard work and devotion of my son Derek. She gestured to Derek, who stepped forward looking like a man walking to the gallows, who had convinced himself it was a coronation. The crowd applauded. Someone shouted, Amen. Derek is a good son. Bernice continued, her voice rising. He understands the biblical command to honor thy mother. He did not build this house for himself. He built it for legacy. He built it so the king name would stand tall in Atlanta. He is the head of this house. He is the provider. He is the rock. I gripped the silver tray so hard my knuckles turned white. The rock. A rock made of sandstone that was crumbling into dust. And I just want to say, Bernice concluded, lifting her glass high. To those who doubted us, to those who thought we would never make it out of the struggle, look at us now, we have arrived. To the kings, the bishop shouted. To the kings, the crowd roared back, raising their glasses. I checked my watch. 7:59 and 50 seconds. Derek raised his glass, basking in the adoration. He looked at his mother with tears in his eyes. He opened his mouth to speak. Click. The house went black. Not just the lights in the foyer, the landscape lighting outside, the pool lights, the kitchen appliances, everything died instantly. The sudden darkness was absolute and terrifying. A collective gasp ripped through the room. A woman screamed as she dropped her glass, the sound of shattering crystal echoing in the dark. What happened? Bernice screeched, her voice shrill with panic. Derek. Fix it, is this part of the show? Someone asked nervously. Stay calm, everyone. Derek shouted, his voice cracking. Just a blown fuse. Too much power. Kyle, go check the breaker box. I stood still in the darkness. I did not move. I did not panic. I counted. 1, 2, 3. Outside the massive front windows, brilliant beams of light cut through the night. Blue, red, blue, red. The strobe lights of multiple police cruisers washed over the terrified faces of the guests, painting them in chaotic flashes of color. The front doors, which were heavy oak and locked, did not just open, they were pounded on. Boom, boom, boom. Fulton County Sheriff. Open the door. The silence that followed was heavy, broken only by the whimpering of Prince the poodle. Derek scrambled in the dark. I cannot find the door handle. Someone get a light. The doors swung open. Powerful flashlights sliced through the foyer, blinding everyone. 4 uniformed deputies stepped inside, their hands resting on their belts. Behind them walked a man in an immaculate charcoal suit, carrying a leather briefcase. It was David. Behind David walked a team of 4 movers wearing jumpsuits with the logo Asset Recovery Team on the back. The guests shrank back, pressing themselves against the walls. The bishop looked like he was praying for invisibility. Derek shielded his eyes from the flashlights. Who are you? He screamed, trying to regain control. You are trespassing. This is a private party. I am Derek King. I own this house. The lead deputy lowered his flashlight, illuminating Derek's sweating face. Derek King? The deputy asked calmly. Yes, Derek shouted. And I demand to know why you are interrupting my mother's speech. David stepped forward. He did not look at Derek. He looked at the room. He looked at the expensive furniture. He looked at the lobster thermidor on the buffet table. Mr. King, David said, his voice smooth and projecting clearly to the back of the room. I am David Ross, representing the lien holder Phoenix Holdings. Phoenix Holdings. Derek laughed, a manic, hysterical sound. I do not know any Phoenix Holdings. I have a mortgage with First City Bank. You have the wrong house. Get out. David opened his briefcase. He pulled out a document stamped with the red seal of the court. Actually, Mr. King, First City Bank sold your note 30 days ago. Phoenix Holdings is the current owner of the debt. And according to the terms of your mortgage agreement, specifically the clause regarding immediate default upon failure to pay the initial installment, we are exercising our right to reclaim the property. What? Bernice shrieked, stumbling down the stairs in the dark. What is he talking about, Derek? He is lying. Mom, Derek yelled, turning to the guests. This is a mistake. My lawyer will fix this. David handed the document to the deputy, who then handed it to Derek. This is a writ of possession executed by emergency court order this afternoon, David said. You are hereby evicted from the premises, effective immediately. Evicted, someone in the crowd whispered. Derek stared at the paper. His hands were shaking so hard he could barely hold it. No, he mumbled. No. I paid the deposit. I liquidated my 401k. I paid the money. You paid the arrears to the previous owner, David corrected him. You failed to make the first payment to the new lender. And frankly, Mr. King, based on the fraudulent financial statements you submitted during the application process, Phoenix Holdings has decided to accelerate the foreclosure. Fraudulent. The deacon whispered loud enough for everyone to hear. That is a lie, Derek screamed, lunging toward David. 2 deputies stepped forward, blocking him. Derek bounced off their chests and stumbled back, nearly tripping over the train of his mother's dress. Sir, step back, the deputy warned. Bernice grabbed Derek's arm. Derek, tell them who we are. I am the owner. Derek roared, his eyes wild. I am the king. You cannot kick me out of my own house. David looked at his watch. Actually, Mr. King David said coldly, you are a squatter, and this party is over. He turned to the asset recovery team. Secure the premises. Tag everything of value. The furniture, the electronics, the artwork. It is all collateral now. Wait! Kyle shouted from the corner, holding his computer tower. You cannot take my rig. This is my property. If it is in the house, it is getting tagged, the deputy said. Put it down, son. Chaos erupted. The movers moved in, putting neon orange stickers on the grand piano, on the sofas, on the silver trays. Guests began to flee. Women in heels were running out the front door, tripping over each other to get to their cars. The bishop was the first one out, abandoning his flock. I stepped out of the shadows. I walked into the center of the foyer, into the beam of the flashlights. Simone Bernice screamed when she saw me. Tell them we live here. Do something. I looked at Bernice. Her hat was crooked. Her mascara was running. She looked small. I looked at Derek. He was hyperventilating, clutching the eviction notice like a lifeline. I walked over to David. Hello, David, I said. David smiled at me, a genuine smile. Good evening, Mrs. King. Or should I say, Madam Chairwoman? Derek stopped breathing. He looked at me. He looked at David. Madam Chairwoman. Derek whispered. I turned to face my husband. The blue and red lights danced across my face. I told you, Derek, I said softly. I told you that you did not understand business. What is going on, Simone? Derek pleaded, reaching for my hand. Why is he calling you that? Because Derek, I said, pulling my hand away as if he were contagious. I am Phoenix Holdings. The silence that followed was louder than the screams. Bernice gasped. Her hand flew to her mouth. You, she whispered. You bought the house. I bought the debt, Bernice. I said. I own the mortgage. I own the interest. And I own the foreclosure order. Derek fell to his knees. He actually collapsed his legs, giving out under the weight of the truth. No, he sobbed. No. You are lying. You are just a worker bee. You do not have that kind of money. I walked over to him. I leaned down until my face was inches from his. I have always had the money, Derek. I just never spent it on suits and fake friends. I saved it. I invested it. And when you decided to steal from our daughter to build a shrine to your mother, I used it to buy the shovel to dig your grave. I stood up and looked at the deputies. Officers, I want these trespassers removed from my property. But I live here, Tanisha screamed, clutching her purse. Not anymore, I said. Get them out, I commanded. As the deputies moved in to escort my weeping husband and his shrieking mother out the door, I turned and walked toward the stairs. Where are you going? David asked. To get my daughter, I said. We have a long drive home. And I promised her ice cream. The chaos in the foyer had settled into a simmering, terrified silence. The jazz band had fled, packing their saxophones and trumpets with the speed of men who knew they were not getting paid. The guests had evaporated, leaving behind half-eaten lobster tails and spilled champagne that was slowly soaking into the rugs. The only people left in the cavernous room were the police officers, the asset recovery team, and the remnants of the King family who were huddled together near the grand piano like shipwreck survivors clinging to driftwood. David stood in the center of the room, calm and immovable as a mountain. He held the foreclosure file in his hand, tapping it rhythmically against his leg. This is insanity, Derek sputtered, wiping sweat from his forehead with a cocktail napkin. You cannot do this. I have rights. I am the buyer. I signed the papers with the agent. I gave them a certified check for $200,000. David stopped tapping the file. He looked at Derek with a mixture of pity and professional disdain. You signed a purchase agreement with the previous owner, Marcus Thorne. David explained, his voice projecting clearly in the empty hall. You paid him for his equity, that is true. But you failed to perform due diligence on the underlying debt. Englishman, speak English. Kyle shouted from behind Tanisha. David turned his cold gaze to Kyle. In English, it means the house came with $1 million mortgage attached to it. When you bought the house, you bought the debt. And the entity that owns that debt is not a bank. It is a private equity firm. And that firm has a zero-tolerance policy for default. Derek laughed a high-pitched hysterical sound. Phoenix Holdings, right? That is what you said. Phoenix Holdings. That is correct, David said. Well, get them on the phone, Derek roared, pulling out his own mobile. I want to speak to the chairman. I want to speak to the CEO. I will straighten this out. I am a businessman. We can work out a deal. I will pay them double next month. Just get the decision maker in front of me. I cannot do that over the phone, David said, checking his watch. See? Derek yelled, turning to Bernice. They are stalling. They know they are wrong. They are afraid to face me. No, Mr. King, David interrupted softly. I cannot get them on the phone, because the chairman is already on the premises. Derek froze. Bernice looked around wildly. Who, she hissed. Is he here? Is he one of the police officers? David stepped aside. He gestured toward the top of the double staircase. If you would like to negotiate, you may speak to the majority shareholder now. All eyes turned upward. At the top of the stairs, standing in the pool of light cast by the chandelier that had miraculously flickered back on, was a woman. But it was not the woman who had been serving drinks an hour ago. It was not the woman in the gray administrative assistant skirt. It was not the woman with the messy bun and the clipboard. It was me. I had slipped away during the initial panic of the police raid. I had gone into the master suite, Bernice's suite, and unlocked the garment bag I had hidden in the back of the closet days ago. I was wearing a dress of crimson silk. It was structured sharp and fit me like a second skin. It was the color of blood. It was the color of fire. It was the color of a phoenix rising. My hair was down, cascading over my shoulders in waves. I wore no jewelry except for my wedding band, which I twisted slowly on my finger. The silence in the room was absolute. You could hear the hum of the refrigerator from the kitchen. I took the first step down. Click. My stiletto heel hit the marble. Click. I took another step. Derek's mouth fell open. He blinked, rubbing his eyes as if he were seeing a hallucination. Simone, he whispered. Bernice squinted, her jaw dropping. What are you wearing? Why are you dressed like that? I did not answer. I kept walking. I moved with a slow, predatory grace that I had suppressed for 10 years. I descended the stairs like a queen coming down to inspect the execution of a traitor. I reached the bottom of the stairs and walked straight through the center of the room. The deputies parted for me. The movers stopped tagging furniture to watch. I stopped 3 feet in front of my husband. I looked him up and down, taking in his rumpled tuxedo, his sweating face, his utter patheticness. Hello, husband, I said. My voice was low, smooth, and rich. You wanted to see the chairman? I continued, tilting my head slightly. You wanted to negotiate with the owner. I spread my arms, the red silk rippling around me. Negotiate. Derek shook his head, a nervous smile twitching at the corner of his lips. Simone, stop playing. This is serious. David says the owner is here. Go get changed. We need to look presentable when he comes out. David cleared his throat. Mr. King, please address the chairwoman with respect. Derek looked at David, then he looked back at me. The realization hit him like a physical blow. His knees buckled slightly. No, he breathed. No. You Phoenix Holdings, I said, savoring the syllables. Phoenix, like our daughter's middle name. The daughter you locked in a closet. Bernice let out a strangled gasp. You are the bank. I turned my gaze to her. She shrank back against the piano. I am the bank, Bernice. I am the lien holder. I am the landlord. And you are trespassing. But how? Derek stammered, his brain trying to process the impossibility of it. You are just a worker bee. You count beans. You make $60,000 a year. I laughed. It was a genuine laugh, bright and terrifying. Oh, Derek. I made $60,000 a year in my first job out of college. My base salary as a forensic auditor for the last 5 years has been $300,000. My consulting fees are double that. And my investment portfolio, I took a step closer to him. Let's just say I could buy this house 3 times over with cash and still have enough left to buy the dealership you work at and fire you. Derek's face turned the color of ash. He looked at Tanisha. He looked at Kyle. They were staring at me with open mouths, their little parasitic brains short-circuiting. But you drove a Toyota. Tanisha whispered. Because wealth whispers, Tanisha, I said without looking at her. Only poverty screams. And your brother has been screaming for a very long time. I turned back to Derek. Do you want to know how you lost everything, Derek? Do you want the audit? He did not speak. He just stared at me. You were so desperate to be the big man I began circling him like a shark. You trusted a crooked real estate agent because he flattered you. He told you that you only needed to pay the seller's equity to move in. He told you the debt could be refinanced later. I stopped behind him and whispered in his ear. But you did not check who owned the debt. You did not check the foreclosure filings. The bank was selling the note for pennies on the dollar because it was a toxic asset. They just wanted out. I walked back around to face him. So I bought it. I used the money I have been saving for 10 years. I bought the note on Monday morning. And do you know what the terms of that note are? I pulled a piece of paper from David's file. Immediate acceleration clause upon transfer of title. That means the moment you signed your name on the deed, the entire $1 million balance became due. Instantly. You walked into a trap, Derek. And you were so busy looking in the mirror admiring your crown that you did not see the floor dropping out beneath you. Derek looked at the paper. He looked at the police. He looked at his mother. You did this to me, he whispered, his voice trembling with rage and sorrow. You set me up. You are my wife. You are supposed to support me. Support you? I asked, my voice rising. I supported you when you failed the exam for your broker's license. I supported you when you got fired from the last dealership. I supported you when you gambled away our savings in Vegas. I pointed up the stairs. But when you joined forces with your mother to call my child a defect, when you plotted to steal her therapy money, when you put your hands on me in the kitchen because I refused to hide her like a shameful secret, that is when the wife died. Derek, and the auditor was born. Bernice stepped forward, tears streaming down her face. Simone, please, she wailed. We are family. You cannot put us on the street. It is nighttime. Where will we go? I looked at the woman who had made my life a living hell for a decade. I do not know, Bernice. Maybe you can go to a hotel. Oh, wait. Derek liquidated the savings account, didn't he? I looked at Kyle. Maybe Kyle can pay for it with his crypto millions. Kyle looked down at his shoes. Or maybe I said, walking toward the front door. Maybe you can go back to the condo. Bernice's face lit up with hope. Yes, the condo. We can go back there. I stopped at the door and turned around. My red dress swirled around my legs. Oh, I forgot to mention. I bought the note on the condo too. And since Derek missed the payment on that one to pay for this party, I foreclosed on that this morning as well. The locks have already been changed. Derek made a sound like a wounded animal. He dropped to his knees, burying his face in his hands. So I said, opening the heavy oak door to the night air, you are homeless, you are broke, and you are alone. I nodded to the lead deputy. Get them out of my house. As the police moved in to drag them away, I did not watch. I turned and walked toward the kitchen. I had a promise to keep. There was a little girl upstairs waiting for ice cream. And for the first time in her life, her mother was going to give her a home where no one would ever ask her to be quiet again. The flashing lights of the police cruisers painted the driveway in a chaotic rhythm of red and blue. It was a stark contrast to the elegant golden lighting Bernice had insisted upon for her grand entrance. Now, instead of descending a staircase like a queen, she was being escorted down the front steps by a deputy, clutching her toy poodle and sobbing into her ruined makeup. I stood by my car, buckling Maya into her booster seat. She was wearing her noise-canceling headphones, humming a soft tune, completely shielded from the destruction of her father's ego happening just 10 feet away. I closed the car door gently, ensuring she was safe, before turning back to face the wreckage one last time. Derek broke free from the officers and ran toward me. He looked nothing like the man who had shoved me in the kitchen hours earlier. His tuxedo jacket was torn at the shoulder. His tie was gone, and his face was a mask of sheer terror. "Simone, please," he begged, reaching out but stopping short when the deputy placed a hand on his holster. "You cannot leave me like this. You cannot leave me with nothing." I smoothed the fabric of my red dress. "I did not leave you with nothing, Derek. You did that yourself." "But where will I go?" he cried, looking around at the dark street. "I have no money. I liquidated the accounts. You foreclosed on the condo. I have nowhere to sleep tonight." He paused, a flicker of hope igniting in his desperate eyes. "The house," he gasped. "Our house. The bungalow. It is still in my name. I can go there. I will stay there until I sort this out." I laughed. It was a soft, dry sound. "Oh, Derek. You really did not read the papers, did you?" He froze. "What papers?" "The loan documents," I explained, stepping closer so I could see the realization hit his eyes. "The papers you made me sign in bed. The ones you said were just standard boilerplate. You were so busy trying to trick me into giving you power of attorney that you did not notice the amendment I slipped in." He shook his head, confused. "Amendment?" Page 4. "Derek, the amendment to asset distribution. It stated clearly that if you used marital funds to purchase a secondary property without my name on the deed, you automatically forfeited your entire interest in the primary residence." His mouth fell open, the color drained from his face until he looked like a corpse. "You signed it, Derek," I whispered. "You signed over the bungalow to me. Sole ownership. It is my house now, and the locks were changed an hour ago." He fell to his knees on the asphalt. He screamed. It was a primal sound of a man realizing he had been outplayed, outsmarted, and completely dismantled by the person he thought was a fool. Bernice, hearing this, turned on him like a viper. "You lost the house too," she shrieked, hitting him with her purse. "You stupid, useless man! You told me you had it under control. You told me we were rich. Now I am on the street because of you." Derek just sat there, taking the blows, too broken to defend himself. Behind them, the garage door opened. Kyle and Tanisha walked out, dragging their suitcases. They did not look at Derek. They did not look at Bernice. They walked straight past their family toward Tanisha's rusted sedan. "Where are you going?" Derek called out weakly. "Tanisha. Kyle, help me. We can get a hotel room together." Kyle laughed, throwing his suitcase into the trunk. "Sorry, bro," Kyle said, not even making eye contact. "We are going to stay with my cousin in Jersey. We cannot deal with this drama. You are on your own." "But we are family," Bernice wailed. "Tanisha, I am your mother." Tanisha got into the driver's seat and slammed the door. "You should have managed your money better, Mom," she yelled through the window. "That is what you always told me." She revved the engine and sped off, leaving tire marks on the driveway of the mansion they had pretended to own for exactly 7 days. The parasites had detached from the host the moment the blood ran dry. I looked at Derek and Bernice, left alone on the curb with nothing but their vanity and a foreclosure notice. "Goodbye, Derek," I said. "Simone, wait," he pleaded, tears streaming down his face. "I love you. I am sorry. We can fix this." I opened my car door. "You do not love me, Derek. You loved the control you thought you had over me. And as for fixing this," I looked up at the massive empty house looming behind him. "Some things are not meant to be fixed. They are meant to be demolished." I got into the car and drove away. I did not look in the rearview mirror. I did not need to see them fade into the distance. They were already part of my past. We drove to the nearest ice cream parlor just as I had promised. Maya ordered chocolate with sprinkles. We sat in a booth watching the late-night news on the TV in the corner. I watched my daughter eat her face messy and happy, completely unburdened by the toxicity that had surrounded her for so long. She was free. We were free. 3 months have passed since that night. The fallout was swift and brutal. The news of the foreclosure spread through our community like wildfire. In the world of Atlanta's black elite, reputation is currency, and Derek was bankrupt. He was fired from the dealership within a week. It turns out customers do not want to buy luxury cars from a man who is being sued by his own wife for fraud. The last I heard, he was working at a used car lot 2 towns over, living in a weekly rate motel. Bernice did not fare much better. The church ladies she had tried so hard to impress were the first to turn their backs on her. Humiliated and homeless, she had to move in with a distant cousin in Alabama who hates her. I heard she is working part-time as a greeter at a grocery store. Every time I think about it, I hope she remembers the lobster thermidor. As for Tanisha and Kyle, they disappeared into the ether, likely finding another host to leech off of. I do not look for them. I do not care. I am sitting now in the living room of my bungalow, the same house Derek tried to mortgage away. It looks different now. I painted the walls a soft cream color. I got rid of the leather furniture he loved. I filled the space with light and plants and peace. Maya is thriving. We used the money I saved, the money Derek tried to steal, to enroll her in a specialized school for neurodivergent children. She has friends. She is happy. And her room has a big bay window where she lines up her cars every single day, and no one tells her to stop. I pick up my glass of wine and look at the camera one last time. They called me a worker bee. They called me a bean counter. They called me not so smart. They made the fatal mistake of confusing silence with stupidity. They thought that because I did not scream, I did not have a voice. They thought that because I served them, I was a servant. But that is the thing about the quiet ones. We are the ones listening. We are the ones watching. We are the ones taking notes while you are too busy hearing yourself talk. I take a sip of wine that tastes rich and victorious. So if you are out there living in a shadow cast by someone else's ego, if you are being told you are less than, if you are being made to feel small in your own life, remember my story. Do not get mad. Get smart. Document everything. Know your numbers. And when the time is right, do not just leave. Own the exit. I am Simone King, and I am finally the queen of my own castle. Thank you for watching my story. If you enjoyed watching a narcissist get exactly what he deserved, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. And let me know in the comments, what is the best revenge you have ever gotten on someone who underestimated you? I read every single one. Until next time, stay sharp and always read the fine print.